Esports Podcast, Noun. A 2-hour-long video full of banter and nonsense where the guests are only introduced halfway through and the outro makes you think your internet's died. Huh.
Right, this is going to be the second episode of Daring Minds, which, I mean, it's only been like a fucking week. So yeah, spoiler, in a week I haven't learned all of Valorant and watched all the games. In fact, I haven't watched any. No, I did actually look into a little bit more.
What disappointment.
I'm even going to start to lightly play the games to get a sense of it. But as people haven't figured it out yet, as I explained in the intro to the previous one, it's not about what I know. And in fact, on this episode, I'm a host, and these two people will be talking about Valorant, and then I'll just awkwardly interrupt them / make jokes that people won't find funny and say things that are abstract from other games and potentially 20 years out of date. Not really, but that's just what all you haters believe in it. So I pretended for a moment like you, the hater, with the consensus and actually being catered to, not just some sort of, fucking anorak-ridden degenerate who's just got a parasocial relationship with people in esports, is spewing your shit opinions on the internet. Yeah, listen, that's a bit of a boomer reference, I know, with it. So in the modern day, it's not really an anorak, is it? It's more like, fucking, I don't know, We Are Boo t-shirt with like an Attack on Titan or something, I don't know. And people don't know, by the way, as well, it's also just really surreal to me. I'll never get over the fact that Sideshow's actually in esports, because what's weird is, first of all, he actually is really old school compared to modern day people, because he played fucking Team Fortress 2, if people don't know.
Modern day
and
people.
Nobody played that game, I'm telling you. So he's actually pretty old school. But here's what's mad. Gio won't know this. Sideshow legitimately comes from something mental, like 8 miles from where I lived in the UK most of my life, basically. So he's probably one of the only people from my area. The joke is, I thought there was no one in esports. There wasn't. He was off playing Team Fortress 2, wasn't it? Yeah, you see the joke. We all get the joke. Yeah, that's right. It's all good. It's all right now. You made it, sort of, thanks to Overwatch, which then allowed you to come for Valorant. So it's a cutest route, but you got to esports in the end. You got here in the end.
We made it. Yeah.
I also missed the obvious opportunity to do the joke that you did get your way to esports, didn't you? You're back with esports. So there you go.
Yes, of course.
Exactly.
Everything leads back, all roads.
Exactly. I remember going to like an iSeries in 2019, and they still had their tiny little booth where it's like the biggest TF2 tournament in the world is played, and it's like 5 meters by 5 meters.
I believe it. Yeah,
like just cordoned off behind a curtain.
Yes.
Yep.
The sad thing that people don't know is, though, like, it is actually a really hardcore game if people don't know. It's actually a game with a lot of skill and a lot of things. It wasn't, by the way, too watered down for the fans. In fact, some would say Overwatch is the spiritual successor. Right? One thing I want to know is this, though, Sideshow. We actually discussed this briefly on the last episode. But one thing I always found very weird was I get that the sort of genesis of the narrative of how Valorant came as a game sort of goes like this. For years and years, there was a rumour that Riot was working on an FPS game, right? And then even years ago, long before, people in CS, because we know Volcano, the guy who used to be a pro in CS 1.6 and was a CSGO, like, I think he was already into like dev work already in CSGO, because he obviously helped make one of the maps. Basically, we knew he was going over. So I get why that angle made people make the whole narrative about Valorant, like Valorant versus CSGO, like compare them side by side, like how are they said? Because even though, like, obviously there are certainly elements of it that come from the genre of what CSGO tries to do as a game, but to me, the second I saw that they were going to have agents and abilities, I immediately just started thinking, dude, you guys from Overwatch are just going to be a fucking shoo-in if you guys ever come over, because the game, to me, it has way more sort of like meta contextualization to do with Overwatch than it does a CSGO. Like when I come in as like look at the last episode, I basically mistake like initiators for entry players, for example. So like it's way more akin to me what we were seeing in Overwatch than it is for CSGO. Sideshow, what do you think?
I can understand that thought process for sure, but I think it's the case of like assuming because it's different to what you're currently in, it's more similar to the thing across the fence. Because a lot of Overwatch people would say this game is nothing like Overwatch.
Really?
Way more like CS. Just because the core fundamentals of how you play Valorant, I think are much more, you have to understand the TAC FPS brain before you can even start to tackle the ability portion. Because and even the ability portion is pretty far away from Overwatch. Like, not many of the abilities are on cooldowns. You have like a game plan at the beginning of the round. It's not fast-paced respawn mechanics. Like those kind of things change the flow of the game way more. I know a lot of the Overwatch fans that I've tried to start translating into Valorant fans are like, man, I kind of like this game, but God, is it slow paced?
Oh, right. I see.
And I'm thinking, this game is snappy. Like, you have to make decisions every couple of seconds. There's abilities all over the place. There's ults popping up in the middle of a round. But they're coming from it from a perspective of like the the respawn based, I'm alive for 90% of the time, always taking a team fight kind of angle. So I think Valorant is poised actually in a really nice place where it's unique. It is just unique. There isn't anything like it. The closest I would say it has the most similarities with like a CS kind of game, but it's so far away from that, especially now 2 years on, which is why it blows my mind, by the way, that like 100 Thieves are in the midst of some crazy shit right now with how their roster works and stuff like that. Absolute identity crisis. And their players are coming out on stream being like, yeah, well, the reason that we fucked up the offseason, we mainly being the org here, I'm not blaming the players, but the reason that 100 Thieves messed up the offseason is because we were pursuing a player from CS. What the fuck are you doing pursuing a player from CS that doesn't have any Valorant experience 2 years into the game? That's a losing strategy.
That's still a thing.
The game's so different.
I hope that had gone, because if people don't know, even as recently as the end of last year, as far as I know, that was still the case, that essentially if you were like a famous CSGO pro, you didn't even ever have to have installed or played a game of Valorant, and you could still get contracts offered from real, like, big name American, nearly all American, I will say, American orgs that would offer you like a starting salary that was like, what? So I assume that was just the first year and a half, so I'm amazed if that still goes on.
I don't think it happens very much, but I think that's a notable exception at the moment.
Yeah, I think this, because this was something that we spoke about a little bit last week, was like we're kind of at that point, or I don't think it's that we've just reached that point, but in the last few months, it's been that point where it's gone from, okay, we really prioritize like non-endemic ex-pros from other games to actually the endemic talent pool that are coming up through Valorant in the time that it's existed now, actually are probably the better option for the most part, if you were to generalize, and are really like outshining a lot of those OG Valorant pros who were coming in from other games.
Because obviously this segues into some news, as you said, with the 100 Thieves players Sideshow, where basically one of them, my old mate Hiko from CSGO, like, essentially, if people don't know, by the way, the fact that they're revealing, like, who the org's picking up is also why Sentinels made that joke elsewhere. If people don't get it, they're obviously, like, mimicking the same terminology. We'll get to that later, don't worry. So, obviously, this whole story where, like, I'd also heard things from behind the scenes, because as people might know, 100 Thieves is largely the ex-CSGO pros. In fact, some of them quite recent pros. I had also heard similar things, that basically it wasn't the players that decided those moves. That was like more org decision. And then they're sort of like in a situation where it's like you're sort of waiting and see. So what was the vibe you got from that, Gia? Did you actually get the vibe that it was almost like the players, like it sounds like they're low-key sort of dissenting against the org a bit with how they're putting this out?
Well, so yeah, the Hiko clip, the one that I'm assuming you're referencing is the one that got shared on Reddit, where he was talking about how they were disappointed because the two players they'd been looking at were Cryo and Xander, both of whom went to different NAVCT orgs. Cryo went to XSET, Xander went to V1, but they both originally actually came from the same team. They were both on SOAR together. And Hiko was kind of talking about how he was really disappointed that they hadn't been able to get them for like whatever reason it was. And I don't know, like I at least have, Hiko's kind of known a bit, at least as the golden child of 100 Thieves. Like there's all these memes about how like Nadeshot's going to constantly blow up the roster, but they're just going to build around Hiko. So I suppose to an extent he can get away with saying stuff like that a little bit more, but I'm kind of like watching 100 Thieves with a sort of suspicious eye at the moment, because if they do end up dropping their 2 new players again, then their 4 new players that they added over the last 2 months will have each basically had 2 weeks to play, and
true, yeah.
And it's just like I'm just very I don't even have like an overall general opinion about whether or not players should be talking about or expressing their opinions about their disappointment. It's probably not the best idea to be talking like on a live stream about how yeah, we were really disappointed we didn't get the players we wanted. So here are 4 others that we picked up. We picked up 2, they weren't good enough. We picked up another 2. I don't think that's probably the best for team morale. But yeah, I suppose that's their shit to deal with. But like the whole thing with 100 Thieves, like in general, I have no idea what the fuck is going on inside their roster. There was some clip that Nade shot that actually got deleted, unfortunately, of Nade shot when he was doing his watch party this weekend, where he was like, as you guys know, I'm really disappointed because we're here to like fucking win, and like I'm really grateful for Bang and JC Stani for stepping in. They've got bright futures ahead of them. It's like, what bright future? Is there bright future not with 100 Thieves? Are you about to fucking get rid of them as well? So I just wish 100 Thieves would just stand by their fucking roster, whether it's Hiko who's going to be supporting the people who are on their team, or Nature who's supporting the people on their team. The people on the team, to some extent, need some support, otherwise it's going to keep happening.
Technically, he's not wrong. By releasing them from the 100 Thieves org, he might have given them a brighter future. Thanks for this.
Yeah, I think that might be.
You're a very kind individual.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, no, what do you think about this though, Sideshow? Obviously, any angle you want to go on it.
I think the opening question that you put forward was, is it some kind of dissent within the team? And I think dissent is quite difficult when they don't have, as far as I'm aware, a GM making those decisions in the first place. So I think that's, I think the org, the number one thing that it lacked in the offseason was guidance. And I think it brings, comparing again the CS world to the Valorant world as well. I think one of the things that I've really appreciated from the time in Overwatch and Overwatch League was that all of the orgs had this fake structure installed so early on that kind of grew into real structure. And what I mean by that, for anyone who's unfamiliar, is that the league just kind of imposed this hierarchy of like, you must have a GM and you must hire coaches and then you must have players. So none of the teams were like player driven, player run, which tends to be a bit more chaotic. Now, that wasn't the case in a lot of situations because there were bad GMs being hired early on.
Of course,
but once you get to a position where you're hiring competent people, that structure is way better for a team overall. Just gives you more of a vision. And I think one of the things that Hiko was probably frustrated about, if I'm trying to put myself in the players' shoes, is if they did want Cryo and Xander, it's not the players' responsibility to go and negotiate and seek those buyout deals and see whether they have that budget available. You know what I mean? Like those are not player decisions to make. And yet the players might be the people saying, let's pick up those guys, and maybe not understanding the barriers that might be in place for that acquisition. And then the rumor was that they were going after Breeze as well. With the CS players. So that complicated things, I think, too. But overall, I think the whole team needs to just start over again. I don't think they should be standing by their roster personally, because I don't think they had a roster identity to begin with. So I kind of feel bad for Bang and Stani because they're not bad players at all. They're very good players. But I think they were added in to a bad
situation.
I want to say a bad core, not because the three players of Ethan Asner and Hiko are bad players, but because their roles were all mixed up. They didn't really know what they wanted to play. They didn't have an identity for the team. Yeah. And so I think it would be a brighter future for Bang and Stanley to go and pursue their options elsewhere, frankly, and for 100 Thieves to just sit down and try and think about, okay, what are we aiming for? And from there, what team do we want to build? Because it's clear to me from Nadeshot's comments that they actually do want to like at least attend international tournaments, but to attend them, you have to be top 2 in North America.
Yes,
that's not an easy task in the current climate where the North American teams have all gone through such development recently. I mean, Sentinels are not likely to be top 2 in North America. It's probably going to be like a C9 and V1 or C9 Optic, something like that. So trying to compete with rosters like that when you only have 2 months to put them back together for stage 2. That is a tough task for anybody.
So here's my kind of like just opinion on your opinion. So what you
just what give you your opinion. About, go ahead.
They need to blow up the whole roster. They need to start again. When you and you made a point that I actually agree with, which is this idea that all of their roles are mixed up. I think somewhere else in that stream with Hiko, like they were talking about how like none of them want to op. So Asna's left to op, but Asna doesn't feel super comfortable on op. So they want to get an op special. They don't have one. So people clearly not on the roles they necessarily want to be. They had this role switch to even bring in Bang and JC Stani. So like the roles they were already playing before have been messed up. Like on all these different maps, they're all switching between their roles. But I think the thing is, if they are going to blow up their roster, the important thing is, and obviously you can't change this retroactively, and we don't know necessarily the internal details on this, but the important thing should have been that when Bang and JC Stani were brought in, knowing that all of these like role changes and stuff were going to come as part of that, they will have had to have said to them beforehand, this could just be a temporary sub situation and we just need to get through the stage. The thing that makes me uncomfortable is the idea that Nadeshot has picked up Bang and JC Stani, giving them this idea that they're going to be building this 100 Thieves around them like they did with Baby J and Eccles, who were then blindsided by the decision to get rid of them. That's the bit that makes me really uncomfortable, is like, if you're going to pick up 2 players, change all your roles, like at least act like you're going to commit to that decision, or let it be known that you're not committing to that decision.
Make it a trial or something.
Through the stage,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Like, it's very different to bring someone in with the implication, like, you're just in the team now, like, welcome, etc. You know, start making a squad, and then you booted, like, as you say, like 2 weeks later, essentially. Like, what? That can't.
That's what happened. That's what happened to Eccles and Baby J, though. I mean, Eccles got brought over from the UK. He's like 21 years old, gets brought over from the UK, plays 2 matches with them, and gets cut. And then Baby J
get his visa, and he was here.
It did.
Certainly, yeah.
And then Baby J's got a 3-year contract that, of course, has like a clause, we can terminate you for no reason. So this is nonsense. And then ends up getting let go. So, yeah, I think it's a very valid point for those two.
Being as me and Sideshow have both been through the nightmare American visa process, which in the modern day, sadly, always ends with, you never get the first time. They always do the, like, requires more evidence, which just means it takes even more time, right? If I went through all that, Sideshow, and then that specific visa was tied to one org that then caught me 2 weeks later, these guys are fucking fairly disciplined boys. I'd fucking melt down on the internet, like, because if people don't get it, the premise would be, if you don't play for that team, that visa no longer works. Like, essentially, you have to go through, it's a very complicated process as well, like swapping the visa to a different company that becomes like sort of your sponsor. It's a nightmare. You don't want to do that, put it that way. Unless they were lucky, and maybe if they were smart, they did it through an agency. Sadly, I'd imagine in the modern day, players just let the org handle it. Well, a couple of things to say. One, on the Hiko thing, here's the reason why I asked if it was dissenting, though. Because the thing about Hiko is this, is he is, as you would expect on camera, he's a very slick individual, right? So here's the thing, he's not dumb. He's not ever going to do a stream where he openly flames anyone, by the way. He will always do it in like a subtle way like this. Like, essentially, I actually think, Gio, he knows what you're talking about. He knows that isn't great for the team. Essentially, this is like his version of being a little bit sneaky and sort of being like, I'll get my own fans essentially to put pressure on the org to kind of like shit or get off the pot and just get us some good players. Like, the messaging there is sort of like, either we didn't get the players we wanted, or like, why are they offering us these players? You're sort of trying to like out like dirty laundry, aren't you? Because in that scenario, like what positive can come out of it except that? Like, I think he's essentially trying to manipulate 100 Thieves to do something about it.
It's a tough position for him to be in, though, because he's not at his peak in terms of community support for 100 Thieves. If he was in that situation a year back, or let's say 6 months ago even, then people would be all over it, and they'd be, you know, the clutch god wants some people moved around his team. That's what should happen. But the narrative is very, very sharply turned. Very sharply turned in the last 6 months away from him, and I think his stock has really never been lower for them. So I think, you know, if there were changes to be made and he was putting pressure on the org to do that, I think his neck would be on the chopping block. So, I mean, perhaps he just sees that coming and he's looking for content creation stuff, though, because I think he is, unfortunately, I'm not wishing it upon him, but unfortunately, he does seem to be one of the like CS big name giants that will slowly fade away throughout 2022. Some people like that do revitalize their careers, but I just can't see it happening.
Sure. Oh, and then the other thing as well was on the topic of, since you said, that's a detail I thought we could actually briefly touch on, is I don't think people who've only ever followed Valorant realize how brutal the qualification / structure of VCT is. And I can tell you, coming from Counter-Strike, right? In Counter-Strike, the main reason why when we went to the online period during all the last couple of years, it made the whole rankings go like upside down and topsy-turvy, and you had teams that no one had heard of literally becoming, no joke, like top 5 teams in the world, and then teams that on LAN couldn't place below top 4 were like unable to even make it in the top 20 of the rankings, is because when you, first of all, everyone knows online is different than LAN. Then you add in open qualifiers, and the structure of those qualifiers just makes it become too much of a crapshoot. Like, effectively, if you're saying like that side, you know, you have to be top 2 in NA, right? You can't guarantee if you're top 2 you'll even qualify, though. And it is, and the problem I have with this is, right, when I see those patterns play out long enough, that like essentially it's not really about how good you are. It's almost like what form do you happen to have on that day, and then also is this like a totally random team of nobodies you're playing? Is it actually some half decent players? Is it people who are just going to be twice as good on the internet? Like, when you factor in all these things, it makes it a bit of a crapshoot who you get at the lands. And I think if you look at the VCT Masters and the actual like real lands they've had, you see, like, from most regions, it seems like it's a massive crapshoot who actually makes it there. And so far as I can tell, unless you're, like, significantly the best team in your region, there's no guarantee you make it.
Yeah. I would say, there's definitely, like, so in NA at the moment, like, literally, as Sideshow was saying before, like, oh, maybe we'll see C9 and Optic, or, you know, C9 whatever. I would say there are like 4 teams in NA right now that are like at the top, and they're all going for those 2 spots. We haven't even got to playoffs yet, but like they're all going for those 2 grand final spots in playoffs, which qualify you for Masters 1. So you know that guaranteed there's going to be some really good teams that straight up aren't going to be making the first LAN. So like 100 Thieves, who already haven't qualified for playoffs, like that's the big thing right now, is they're eliminated. Like not only have they got to get good enough to qualify for playoffs and like beat, I mean in their group now it would have been EG and LG, but like they've also got to get good enough to be in the grand final spot of playoffs, because that's the only way of getting to LAN, which is very fucking hard.
It gets more difficult for them as well, because presumably they'll lose their invite spot to the group stage. So, you know, the open qualifier, they actually did implement a new rule in 2022 so that teams could skip that open qualification process had they done well enough in 2021, which I think that's a good thing. I always actually think back to your analogy, Thorin, of birds taking down airplanes. When I think about this, I think it's a great visual idea of why great teams can still lose, because you can just have a mishap where something much smaller ends up taking down something much larger. And that does happen in open qualifiers for sure. But crucially, some of the teams this year managed to avoid that. I think it was the 4 top teams got invited through. So that was like Sentinels, Optic, C9, and 100 Thieves, I believe. And so 100 Thieves had that kind of prestige position, and it was much easier for them this time around. I believe they're going to lose that next time, either by making roster changes or just because they didn't do well enough in this group stage overall. So that seems even more difficult next time around. So yeah, it is tough out there. It really is. I think something that the Valorant community isn't realizing enough is that when you don't have regular matches with top teams playing against each other, I'll use the example that I used all last year, which was Vision Strikers. The top team in Korea,
of course,
played 5 matches against good competition over 6 months leading up to Champions. Now, that's not enough to get a gauge for any team.
Of course,
you have no idea how good they are at all. They could have dominated their region. They could have won all 5 of those games. You have no idea what their form is looking like. You have no idea like what their ceiling is, what their flaws are, any of that stuff. The sample size is just way too small. And when you get that, you also have the situation where individual tournament wins are overrated a lot. If you win a big tournament because your form was good for that 1 week, you are now classed as a god for the next 3 months because you won the only relevant tournament in that time period. And I think that's something that's sorely lacking from the Valorant scene right now that is present in CS, are the regular tournaments so that you can average out performances over that 3-month period. Because otherwise you just have to look at the Masters and say, they're the best teams.
Yes. Isn't that something that the TSM roster like said recently? They were like, yeah, okay, we didn't do good enough, so now we are going to play in every third-party thing we possibly can because we just want the reps. We're letting go of the big thing for TSM to say, but we're letting go of the ego of like playing tournaments that we think is like below the tier 1.
Sure.
We just want to play because we need to fucking qualify.
And how nuts is that?
Fair play to them, if that's true, though, because as you say, by the way, like that is an ego blast, because you will, as this discussion points out, you will lose some games to some nobodies or some lessons. So you're going to sort of have to take a hit from fans for that, yeah.
What you can say, and also I was going to say that it's nuts that the step down from VCT, the first tournaments that TSM were playing in were like 2.5k tournaments. So there isn't really there are occasional like 25 or 50k tournaments that rear their head. Like NSG have been running a few, which run on more of a circuit kind of system. But overall, there really isn't like a healthy third-party tournament scene. Hopefully this year that'll change because they've built a time into the schedule, which I think is when like the Champions ends in August or something. Yeah, it's like September or October through the end of the year is supposed to be third-party central. And
problem is, Sideshow, we've heard that story before.
I know, we really have.
People don't know that's what they said. That's what they said in Overwatch. They said they would run Overwatch League part of the year, and then they were like, and then the rest will be a beautiful open circuit with milk and honey and like the streets paved with gold, and then obviously they weren't on like.
And the problem is people don't understand why that is, right? They think that the tournament organizers aren't interested or something, but most of the time, if you look, for example, at that tournament that TSM played in, the one that we're referencing, 2.5k prize pool, had 100k viewers. That's
mental, yeah.
Milking the cow dry. It's ridiculous. Yes. Incredible value for the tournament organizer, incredible value for the sponsors, just insane. But so if you're a TO, you're looking at that, you're like, okay, well, we can make some small investments and reap big viewership rewards. But most of the time, what's blocking them here, I don't know the specifics for Riot, but I know that this happened in Overwatch, and I'm suspicious that it happened last year in Valorant as well, is that the tournament organizers are charged exorbitant fees for putting on large tournaments. They require a license fee that can be something like $10,000 license fee to run a $5,000 tournament or something. Like, they can be absurd. Normally, it's like, if you're a 5 to 25k tournament, you have to pay 10,000.
Exactly.
You know, it's something crazy like that. And Riot have said they've loosened restrictions, whatever that meant, in 2022. I hope that was part of it, and we see ESLs and DreamHacks and whoever the fuck else involved in the end of this year. But if we don't, it would just be the same story again, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, I feel like I bark up this tree all the time, and I repeat the same sentiment because this is something that I believe really strongly in. But like, Europe, so actually when you talk about third-party tournaments, Europe had like the Red Bull home ground thing at the end of the year as well, which was like good to take up the space. Yeah, no, it was great. And then now they've got the VRLs as well. But I think like, and this is, I think that a big esports problem is that you don't have as many like tier 2 regional like chances for development in the NA scene, and that's why people are like, oh, why are NA shit at esports? Well, it's because no one's investing in like the bit that's below the very elite, and so you get like this vacuum. So I really hope that there is more investment into specifically having tournaments, like the third-party tournaments for the NA scene, because of the reasons that started this conversation, and about like teams getting the reps and being able to develop, and not just having to rely on like the VCT games that they play in, but also just because for the health of the scene, like, and developing the talent to come through the scene, because that's how talent dries up, is if you don't nurture that part of the player base.
And you just kill two birds with one stone, because as we're saying, not only do you let a team, in this case we'll use TSM as an example, not only does TSM get to play more and actually see how good they are, but then whatever team's playing against TSM, they get to share the exposure of the 100k viewers. Like, it's a win for everyone if you do it right, obviously, you know, as long as it makes sense on Riot's end. Right, what about this then? So before we move off to another topic, I actually want to circle back on the 100 Thieves topic and ask this question. So basically, one thing I do hate when I've looked into the player changes they've made is I'm also not a believer in the like ship of Theseus approach to making teams, where you just slowly take out one piece and then you put another piece in, and at the end it's like, but it's a totally different team. Like, shouldn't we just build this from, you know, either build it from square one with like the total vision in mind, or really just make a replacement where it's like it is a 1-for-1. So if you look at the team they have now, the whole problem is they can't have an identity, can they? Because look at the players they have. Like, what core do they have from all the years back? Who have they got? Who's coming in and out? And you look at the pieces they've removed some of the biggest names in their team, like Steel and Nitro. So what I want to ask is this, like, what point do you think it was where they went like too far beyond whatever the old 100 Thieves was, that we all saw the lands, etc.? How have they gotten into this mess now? Like, who do you think the key piece that they removed that sort of like was the key domino? Who would you put it to?
I think
if you ask Reddit would say Nitro leaving is what, like, Reddit are obsessed with the fact that like Nitro ruined this team, Nitro leaving. But if I'm not mistaken, it was Nitro's choice to leave, right? Like, he chose to go back to CS. He went back to CSGO,
yeah.
Whereas, like, the whole thing with Steel was very strange, because he got dropped just a couple of weeks after Masters 3, where they performed pretty well. And his whole thing was, like, I felt like I couldn't concentrate. Like, I felt my calls were really bad. And then he's, like, unceremoniously dropped. And I wonder if, like... I don't know, like, giving him room to develop, like, it just, to me as an outsider, just with that piece of information, seems very, I just don't like the idea of, like, giving up on someone. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing.
I think
that's you're ominous. Okay, fair enough. Fucking hell, okay.
I think you're onto the right track there for sure, because that entire move was the team. I don't know which players, but I think it was pretty player.
It was a mutiny, wasn't it? Come on, that one looked like a mutiny, because just the way he himself even phrased it when he left was almost like, they're pushing me out, boys.
Exactly. I think it was them pushing him out. And I look at who took over the reins in terms of IGLing, and that ended up being Nitro, and he wasn't committed to the team long term. And that's one of the problems with committing to people that have opportunities in CS as well, is that you're always going to be competing against their love for CS, the money they can make in CS, and you're over there in Valorant, you can't actually affect any of that. You can't. All you can do is throw larger and larger bags and just hope that they stay. That's another rough reason for like pursuing CS talent. So I think, okay, that didn't end up working for them. Is that something that could have been seen coming, though? That's what I would ask. If you had that overarching, GM figure, could they not have seen that coming, that Nitro was thinking about leaving a couple of months later? Perhaps not. Maybe it truly did blindside them. But either way, that is the move that really fucked them, because they cut one of their IGLs and then the other left to go back to CS.
So
I mean, that's just a disaster.
I was going to say, because not only did they then, the other left to go to CS, then they pick up Eccles to be the next IGL and get rid of him after a couple of weeks. And now they're on their fourth one in a couple of months. And it's like, I don't know how you can really build a team when you're changing who is in charge of the team and is the leadership figure in the team every other day. Oh, obviously that's a bit hyperbolic, but I feel like that's just seems a bit weird.
It's all right. It's all right. But listen, we are aware they're not really doing it every day. It's all right. Don't worry. You just get used to it. By the way, I'm going to say loads of hyperbolic shit, and I'm definitely not going to put any fucking disclaimers. So I'm just going to say that right now. Listen, maybe that's going to be your approach. I don't know. When I say people are shit, I don't actually think they're like human feces, believe it or not. They're bad at video games in the context of professional play. Exactly. Like fucking hell. Anyway, whatever. We'll get back into it. Here's the thing, though. This is another problem I have is though. It does actually imply, by the way, if you are Nadeshot/100 Thieves, fire your GM, mate. They can't do their job. Because the premise goes look, you can certainly have unfortunate scenarios. It even happens in sports where, you sign a player and then the player does some criminal shit in real life, or some outrageous dressing room scenario happens. And you look silly because you just signed him, but they have to get suspended or kicked out of the team. But the difference is, in this particular case, as far as we can tell, they just signed these players, let them play, and were like, not quite my tempo. New guy in. And then it's like, what? At that point in time, that's your judgment that's on call there, whoever signed the players. And also, maybe one or two of these players didn't fit your team. These aren't nobodies. These are fucking real names that you're signing here who've got tenure. What, they all suck. They're all bad. And you can know that after a few weeks. That's the part that beggars belief for me a little bit. It's in that scenario, I almost feel like the GM's being a bit frivolous, just commit to whoever you want. Then how do they do it then? Does Nadeshot do it? How do they get to the players in?
I'm not sure. I think the assumption was that a guy called Melk, their vice president of Esports.
Oh, I know him. Yes, he's a guy from Dota, if people don't know, and he obviously was working in. He was with 100 Thieves for a while now. Yeah,
I'm unfamiliar with him. I don't know whether he is making the decisions, but I think that was the assumption from.
I think in the other games he was doing that role. I think he was sort of like a general manager type thing.
But I think that's too much on one guy's plate if he's working in the role as vice president of esports for the company and trying to make those decisions. I think it seems like a hiring problem, but also I think probably their stopgap solution was to allow the players to have massive input. And I think that breeds a scenario where you can have these mad coups that are happening within your team.
Oh, for sure.
It becomes a common denominator thing, right? To go back to the point you're making about well, it can't be everyone's fault if you keep dropping them. It's what is the lowest common denominator? One thing that I'm curious, Josh, your opinion on is, given all the risk about them not necessarily getting the direct invite into stage 2 because of their performance in stage 1, blah, 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 and potentially wanting to redo their roster again. What do you think the odds are that they just drop everyone and buy out another roster that's already a proven roster?
I mean, that would be an interesting move, wouldn't it? But I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they'll do that, though. I think part of the reason there is that they have one, maybe two insanely good pieces on the roster in Asuna and then potentially Ethan as well, depending on what role he plays and whether he wants to continue IGLing, etc. But Asuna is a legitimate top talent within North America. And if you give up on him, I think the fan base will be even more against you. And then I guess it would just come down to who you bought, but it's an extremely expensive option. Yeah. Frankly, though, I think the bad part about the VCT system is they've already fucked their year. And the reason I say that is there's not going to be talent that's on the free market for stage 2. They have 2 months, to rebuild, to try and get to the next international tournament. I don't see any free talent that they're going to be able to build a top 2 roster in North America with. I just don't think that's a reasonable time scale.
By the way, do they place restrictions? Once you make it through the first stage of the VCT qualifier, is there a restriction on how many players you can change?
3 out of 5.
Keep your spot?
You have to keep 3 out of 5. Yes, right. Which is part of the reason I think that they kept Ethan Asuna Hiko this stage.
Yeah, that must make it tricky
because they needed, I believe, that direct qualification through to the groups. But so They don't need to keep that 3 out of 5 because they're going to go through the opens anyway. But even if they rebuild, I don't believe the talent is there for them. So, all right, now you're thinking about stage 3 or LCQ. It's possible that they get their shit together for LCQ at the end of the year and they go on a mad run and they may make it to champions. Outside of that, if you're not in the first or second international tournament, by the way, there's no stage 3. I don't know why I said that. I'm still thinking about last year. There's only 2 international tournaments and then LCQ.
Yes.
So if you fuck the first 2 international tournaments, yeah, I mean, you have one shot of making it into champions. Otherwise, GG, just build for next year. So that's why VCT is so brutal right now, is that if you mess up that, like, November or I guess December really is when they had to work with because it was after champs. So December through January, February, if you mess up those crucial 2 or 3 months, you have ruined your season because there just isn't talent that's available then to pick up to actually win and get you to international tournaments. You can make it maybe deep. They might be able to make a run for like top 4 in North America for stage 2 if they pick up all the best talent. But otherwise, they might have just fucked their year within the first month.
I'll also say as well, I guess I'd never really thought of that, but that does create a totally unique dynamic with the fact that players who came from CSGO and had actual status, like the Nitros of the world automatic. By the way, if Ethan wanted to come back, I'm almost certain he'd get picked up immediately. I'd never thought of that, but actually, in the same way as in CS, initially, some of the pros were leaving when they didn't have like a great chance right now to be on a good team. I think Valorant might be the only game I've ever seen where people can go back to their old game. Like in Overwatch, no one's going back to Team Fortress 2. You know what I mean? Like, if someone comes to League of Legends now, they're not going back to Heroes of the Storm or whatever the fuck they like. That's it. I don't think I've ever seen that in esports before, dude. Where potentially, essentially, these people can sort of have like slightly one foot in each camp and just look for which is like better in the short term and switch back over. Because it's obviously the ones who were washed. Yeah, they were never going to come back to CS:GO. But people like actually the 100 Thieves people have a bunch of those people could come back tomorrow if they want to. And that's
happened in Overwatch as well.
If you're an org, you got to factor it in. You know that this guy might leave if things go bad.
Yeah, and it happened in Overwatch too. Padapan, a guy that made it to Champions and put on an electric performance at Champions playing for a Southeast Asian roster, has now gone back to the Overwatch League to play for LA Gladiators. I would speculate because the Gladiators offer him minimum $50K a year, and in Southeast Asia, he was with an organization that didn't even pay him any of the money they got for skins at the end. So
they're the whole thing as well with him where he was like, hadn't he been like too young or something in Overwatch, or like, and he was like making Overwatch League was always my dream, so now I have the opportunity. I'm gonna like take it. Fair enough.
I mean, he'd been like 15, I think, when he first played in Overwatch, like at the World Cup, which doesn't have the same age restrictions for legal reasons that I will never understand. And then he's finally I think he's like 18, 19 now. I can't exactly remember what age he is, but he's just become eligible. But the point being that he can also have a foot in each camp too. And somebody like, I don't know, Arns tried moving to Valorant, moved back to Overwatch. It's a weird situation that Valorant's in because people see that it's got enormous growth potential, but in the short term, you actually might be better elsewhere.
I feel like what happens is classic grass is greener. People just look at a couple of things that are different from their game. So if you're in CSGO, for example, you go like, oh, well, at the moment, you know, like in NA, for example, there weren't many tournaments left in CSGO. You had to go to the international competition and fly to Europe most of the year. So they were just seeing all these upsides of like, well, I can stay in NA again. I can play NA competitions. Wow, they're going to give me a great salary, even though maybe not in the best place in my career. But what they didn't think through was things like, yeah, but what tournament are you going to play? What happens if you fail the first 3 weeks of one of these VCT things? Like, they didn't think through like the downsides effectively. But whatever, it's too late from now. Close the door. They're not allowed back. No, they are. If they're good, they're allowed back. If you are like FNS and stuff, just stay over there, mate. We don't need you. Listen, you've still convinced them you're good, so fucking enjoy it. The con can't last forever, mate. So whatever.
He's IGL in.
He is a good team, actually. He is in a good team. I joke. It's mainly the other CLG players. The problem is you guys won't give a fuck about them anymore. They're all being pushed out, haven't they? So whatever. They can't make the joke on them. Right. Here's the question though, because one thing I did want to actually ask about was, to me, the whole topic of the 100 Thieves and the setup and stuff, right? As I said before, because of the way memes work on the internet now, like how everything has to become a copy pasta. Clearly, when Sentinels made that joke where they did a twit longer that was about how they were going to reveal all the people they were thinking of to be their coach, they were obviously like aping the fucking way that the 100 Thieves people framed their thing of like, these are the people we were picking up. And then if you clicked on the twit longer, of course it just said your mom, because they're American. So that's a hilarious joke, sort of like Monty Python or something. It probably lasts for years. So, but if we talk about it more seriously as a premise, obviously we alluded to this very briefly on the last episode, that like Sentinels is a team which not only doesn't have a coach, but effectively seems philosophically to be anti-coach. Like they actually essentially don't seem to think coaches serve a purpose, as far as I can tell.
So there was a rumor that that iRemix was trialing as a coach or something, and then like because it kept being spoken about, that's when Sentinels then did that twit longer, because everyone was talking about like, a Sentinel's going to be picking up like whoever the fuck is a coach. But yeah, that does seem to be the thing. I don't like have any fingers in any pies to like actually get links from anyone as to whether or not they are trialing people, but
they are. No, Shaz has been talking about it on stream actually. Shazam said Shaz said that they were trialing iRemix and Kaplan at the moment. Kaplan being a former IGL for I can't remember which team he was IGLing for actually, but he was an IGL that ended up getting cut a while back, and then he went on to, what was he playing for? SSG. He was the IGL for Space Station Gaming when they were they were like a tier 2, tier 3 team that could punch and occasionally get some upset results. Then he went, apparently he's currently coaching Ghost, which I didn't realize. And I've seen him like making content and analysis videos and doing coaching around the scene for a while. And so he's coaching along with iRemix, which is a name that I didn't think I would hear again.
What a weird name to pull out.
From the dark annals of Overwatch history. And it's almost like the whoever's making the decisions at Sentinels is only tapped into.
It's like a random name, isn't it? I know.
It really is very random, yeah. But I guess he's been doing stuff behind the scenes. I really have no information about where he's been in the last 3 or 4 years, though. So I have no idea whether he'd be a competent
moment with Sentinels.
Yeah, apparently.
What do you think about this as an approach, though? Like, the problem is, from the outside, if you see a team and the whole thing Sideshow's like, wow, they've got all these skilled players and they're really good, and that's like, but they don't have a coach. Like, it seems obvious to me that, like, a coach could certainly bring something to a squad like that. But the question obviously becomes, how coachable do you think the players are? Or stylistically, would they want to play in a more structured fashion? That's why I would be interested to know what you think about that.
I think the writing's on the wall that you need coaching in Valorant at the moment. I think that even if the players would be resistant to it, I don't think the players are stupid. I think they are coming to those same realizations, perhaps a little later, perhaps a few months later or whatever. But certainly within the last, I think we did a bunch of different interviews with Shaz. And when we talked to him early on, I want to say like beginning of 2021, he was saying he wanted somebody that had top level player experience to help coach him, so that because he felt at the time, like, I've heard all of these same comments before in other games too, but
of course
you can't understand the game unless you've had pro experience. The game's too young. There isn't enough time for like good coaches to develop, etc., etc. So that's what he was looking for. Then as the timeline ticks on, it seems like that search has broadened, because certainly Kaplan, you could say, has some high-level experience a long time ago, like a year and a half ago, I think, at this point, maybe only a year ago. And then iRemix, as far as I'm aware, hasn't competed, although maybe he has in some tier 3 team that I just have no idea about. Sure. Yeah, but the point there being, I think they're widening the search, seeing who's available. And my speculation would be it is just becoming inevitable to them that you need a coach. The reason being that the game is just too different to... The game follows a lot of the similar themes to CS, in that you can have very tactical teams or very like individual flowy teams or reactive teams. You can have those same similar styles, but even the most flowy reactive teams, you have to have some level of tactic and like at least tactics between a couple of players in order to maximize your efficiency out of your utility, out of your abilities. Because otherwise you're just leaving value on the table. You have all of this value you could be gathering with your agents. There are different combos you could be setting up, and you're just choosing not to because you haven't put the prep work in. It doesn't harm you in the same sense. You don't have to, some of these agents as well can have global impact whilst not compromising their positioning. We're talking completely different to CS. You don't have to be stuck in one spot waiting to throw the flash for your teammate. You can be a Sky that's like 1,000 yards away, swooping a flash through the air, going to help somebody else, or an Astra that's on a completely different bomb site, helping your teammate. You know, the same risk-reward ratio does not exist in Valorant to the same degree. It is much easier and more valuable to be trying to help your teammates with your utility. And so teams have to trend in that direction. And I think they're realizing that. You don't have to be the most tactical team in the world, but you've got to have some depth to it somewhere. Otherwise, you're just going to get walked over by these other teams that have done the prep work. And I think people are starting to come around to that idea. And I think Sentinels have as well. And yeah, they're probably not going to be the most disciplined, all big execs all the time, but just the little stuff would be very additive to their game.
Sure. What do you think, Gio?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I mean, I am of the opinion that, like, there's a reason that teams have coaches, and like if you want to put it at the most fundamental level, it's because it provides something like when we're talking about them wanting to bring in someone with high level player experience, there's nothing wrong with like coaches who are ex-players, but it's like what you want out of the coach is not the fact they're a player. You want something else that they can add. In a lot of cases, that is structure. That is a different opinion. That is some kind of discipline. I mean, the whole point is like a lot of teams in various esports that will have a head coach and assistant coach, they also have different roles. The head coach is going to be like way more interested in what your like actual like discipline mentality is than the assistant coaches in a lot of cases, for example. So like there is that extra thing that most teams have right now that Sentinels are lacking. And I think that you know, like Josh, you said you've interviewed Shaz a lot, and I don't want to like pretend that I've spoken to him about anything like this, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but sometimes it almost feels like he has been lauded so much as this like genius IGL who like has done, he did all the prep solo for the longest time, and people would really hold him in this venerated position because of that, and it almost feels a little bit like he's reluctant to let that one go and sort of give some of the control to somebody else. And I think that in this time where there was a period of time last year where people were talking about like, you know, EU, they're super structured, and NA, it's still like super mechanical, blah, 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 blah. And actually now the best NA teams are the ones who are amazing at coordinating their utility. Look at how C9 play, look at how Optic play, look at how the Guard play. Like
version 1 as well.
Version 1, yeah, of course. And like those are defined by how well they coordinate the utility, and Sentinels are still kind of playing in this like, we're just like gonna play on the fly, make these quick adaptations because we're mechanically good enough to be able to do that. And it's just not good enough anymore. Not because they're not good enough mechanically. I think that if they had the structure that comes with having a good coach, their peaks would rise, like their ceilings would rise, and they would still have further to go because there is so much potential in this team that is yet to be, you know, realized. But it's just not good enough against teams that have got such a wonderful like permutation of utility that they're using every single fucking round. You just can't brute force your way through that with like one flash and like rushing a site.
Yes.
Yeah. Just two caveats to what you were saying. I think the assumption that Shaz is a bit reluctant to give over that power, I think that could have been what influenced his decision making as to like the very tight fine-tooth comb he was putting over the coaching decisions early on, right? He has been open to adding a coach to Sentinels since like for a full more than a year now. They've been looking for a coach, but he
sounds like it has to be a very specific type of person though, right? Yeah, exactly.
Very selective about it at the beginning. And I think part of that might be because he just doesn't want to fuck up what he had going for them, which was at the time, a year ago, they were easily the best team in the world, and they were dominating North America. And you don't want to mess it up.
No, that's understandable.
Yeah. And so I think that is part of the process over the course of this year, is just easing that up a little bit. And the other caveat is too, that we're talking about this in terms of time. Like 2 years into the game, you need coaching, you need utility, you need structure. I think the other thing we haven't mentioned right now is the meta, because the meta is about to shift pretty significantly in the next patch. And it could go straight back to like on the fly, very low utility, dueling people, speed, aggression, that kind of stuff. I think there will be ebbs and flows in terms of tactics in this game. And it's possible that we've just been in a very tactically dense period of the meta for the last year due to how strong Astra was primarily, but also some of the other initiators. It is possible that over the next like 6 months, things loosen up a lot. And we end up looking back on discussions like this and being like, oh, how little we knew. It was just the meta. But you just don't, you can't tell when the game is so young. We've only had maybe like 4 big meta shifts, or 3, in fact, 3 big meta shifts over the course of the game's history. And this is going to be another huge one. Yeah,
I mean, it was only after Masters 2 that Astra started like really getting played. And Masters 2 was, of course, where Sentinels went undefeated, right? So that lineup did kind of match where they started to dip a little and everyone else sort of started to overtake. So yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and admittedly not one that I had considered, but it's perfectly valid, because the whole thing with the controller changes, like the Astra Viper stuff that's going to go, like there's going to be less opportunity for site setup, which is
it's just a very different game. You have to be willing to try a variety of styles based on what fits the game's balance patch at the time. That's another thing that you really benefit from if you come from Overwatch, trying to play towards that the theoretical with your play style and see if you can master that, because sometimes you just can't. I think a lot of CS people, when they think about like IGLing or running a team or what comps you should run, that kind of thing, that a lot of them come from the point of view, and I think it's a very valid point of view, that you need to play to your roster's strengths. If you have players on your roster that are good at X, then you should be trying to play towards that. But unfortunately, I think Valorant is going to be a rude awakening to some of those teams, because you can't always do that. There are going to be meta changes that force you to play in a certain way in order to get more value than your opponent. And I think that's going to be a pretty rough realization for some teams that have always gone for that, like maximizing the peak from your roster's potential. There now are going to be situations where you have to maximize peak from the patch's potential. And I think that's a bit of a paradigm shift.
Yeah, on the last topic there, by the way, that's also just more in line with historically, if you look at Riot games like League of Legends, how they typically tend to balance their games and how they change the metas. Typically, they do fairly drastic meta shifts. They don't do gradual ones. And when they make a drastic meta shift, because of the way they balance their game, sometimes, like I would say they're one of the most nerf-heavy developers of any that I've ever followed. Like, if people don't know, people like in games like Dota, it's the opposite. You just make everything powerful, basically. And then the idea is, right, you have a massive toolkit, you figure out the solution to what to do if that's OP, you know. Whereas the right approach very much is more like, if possible, like if your personnel at all allows you to play the way that is currently the strongest meta style, you probably should try and do it. Like in certain positions in League of Legends, even if my best player played top lane, for example, if they basically make it so that top lane can't be a carry role, like in theory, I'm going to try it a bit, but I probably won't be as successful, unfortunately, as the team that just had a top lane that didn't have to play carries and they already were in that position personnel-wise. So I can sort of fight it a bit, but not if I want to be the best. Probably the best probably will be the team that has the personnel that just fit what you can currently do and is the strongest. Whereas, as you say, I would say CS is much more of a stale meta that stays the same, and as a result, it's a pretty wide open one as well. So in Counter-Strike, depending on where your strength is, you can totally shift the whole team to that, and you can essentially decide your identity. Whereas, I get the vibe in Riot games, your identity has to somehow mesh/overlap with what their vision of the game is. Otherwise, you're just in for a bad time, or you're going to be the guy who's just complaining about the meta all the time in every interview, every fucking stream, which is fine. You know, that's going to happen. We all know those people. Yeah, of course, those people. Sadly, my boy Steel was one of those. R.I.P. Now, whatever. There's a lot of people like that, to be fair. The only thing is, though, actually, I wanted to go to this quickly on the topic you said that earlier, though, Sideshow, because another crazy thing about switching between different games in esports is that, like, everyone's brain resets and you have to have all the same arguments, like you just said. Like, you have to have the arguments. Like, I'm glad this isn't the beginning of Valorant, because the first year and a half, it actually has played out like that. You would have a year and a half of talk shows where you discuss the premise of, like, what if teams had a coach, as though like you were presenting a new premise to the world, as though you were like a guy who, like an anthropologist 200 years ago who came back from like Africa, like, you know, they have a whole society there, and the way they're, and people are like, tell me more about this. It's like every game in esports history has coaches. Like, the premise goes, essentially, you're all going to go through the same experience of what Shazam, etc. has. You might start out like, well, I don't know, would they really bring that much? And in the end, the real question is just what coach would fit you. We agree. You can't just randomly throw a guy in there and go, congrats, there's your coach. Let him just tell you everything. You notice, by the way, the reason the discussion starts so broad is because all of the bloody cope that they give you, it's always like some whack fucking straw man like that. Like, yeah, but he wasn't a pro, so how would he know? It's like, we're not just putting your grandma in there, are we? Like, we're getting someone who the joke is while you were playing, he was boarding up on the game the whole time. He's not trying to, like Gio said, he's not trying to be an ex-player giving you sort of a friendly tip. Like, I'd do it like this, like, oh, well, you were good, so listen. No, the premise is he's like your coach and he's looking at the macro picture going, like, you played that well individually, but the way you connected up with your team wasn't correct, or, from practice, didn't we do it a bit differently? Like, there's so many angles, even at a minimum, by the way, even if you imagine maybe this could be the case for Sentinels, maybe they do think they're so skilled that they don't think anyone could sort of like tell them minutiae of what they do individually. At a minimum, though, another reason to have a coach, by the way, with superstars is to keep all the egos in line and have a discipline and have a structure and have someone you can go to and not just have it be like a steel cage death match when all the players just start arguing about shit and trying to get each other fired like maybe other teams we referred to earlier. That's another good reason to have a coach, by the way, to have like one central figure to sort of be the guy who sorts everything out, Didn't
it turn out that like the whole fucking like drama with League of Legends TSM's roster swaps recently was because like someone like straight up defied their coach in like a draft pick or something like that?
Yeah, they supposedly locked in a champion that they weren't supposed to, and then just like just on stage like lol.
Right, and I saw like there was so much discussion around it, and so many like little fucking comment analysts were like, well, actually, like, he should defy the coach. It's like, dude, a coach is there to actually, like, kind of keep you in fucking line. Like, if you're defying the coach, then that is a problem. I think people, like, esports fans especially, are so, and obviously there are a number of players who have a bias in this as well, but there are a lot of people who really strongly believe in the player should have all of the power, and anyone who threatens even a percentage of that power is the enemy. And I think, like, there are certain situations where I can see the argument, but for the most part, especially in a developed esports scene, whether we're talking about keeping roster spots or whether we're talking about coaching, whatever it is, like, if you want to have, like, an actual adult league that is run by adults and involves adults and is like not just like everyone with their CRTs in the fucking like a random steamy room in 2004, then you kind of have to have like some level of structure there, and you have to understand that while you might be the star player and you might be like really talented and really great and people pay you a shit ton of money just to exist, that doesn't mean that like everything should be your decision and everything like should come from you. So like it is important to recognize that structure is important, and I think that's something more fans than anything have an issue with. But like, no, just to kind of corroborate your argument more than anything, like it's. So
what you're saying is only fans don't always understand the nature of adult content on the internet.
I'm saying only fans is there's a
it's too easy. It was low hanging fruit, wasn't it? Like, whatever. It's whatever on that one. It's okay. Right. Here's the thing though. Actually, just to tag on the last thing you'd said as well, Sideshow, about maybe Shazam, that like maybe he's the one who was like he could be reticent to have a coach because he was like the fucking genius IGL or whatever. I will say this as well. To be fair, we've also had that in Counter-Strike. Like there are certain people. I'll give you an example. There's one right now who just won a massive tournament. Like, the in-game leader Carrigan in CS:GO is known as like he's sort of a mastermind, but he's not the guy, by the way, where it's always like the playbook. His whole thing's sort of like he's the best like in the moment caller, like on the fly in the mid round. He's just like amazing at sort of reading the defense and figuring out like if we attack this point here, that sort of cracks the whole game. So as a result, by the way, if you look at the people he's had as his coaches, he doesn't typically want the coach who themselves is going to be the guy who's like, this is my team and my vision, and he tends to go more for the guy where the premise is. It's almost like he's a bit of the coach and then that guy's his assistant coach. Like he kind of like, I'll tell you what to scout, or you take care of these players while I'm teaching. So you can balance that out as well if you are Shazam. You can just be careful who you pick. You pick someone who's got your vision and sort of buys in. Yeah,
I think that's fine as well to have somebody who's maybe you would apply them with the label analyst a bit more.
Yeah, they do.
Like counter-stratting, or they research your opponent, or they're cooking up little utility combos for you. But the big picture stuff might still be handled by the IGL. I think that's still fine as well. I think we're still at the point in the game where that could work for certain teams, especially if they've already seen levels of success, like Sentinels have. And I don't again, I don't think Sentinels are reticent. They've worked with the coach previously as well. And the reason that they didn't hire Raucus full stop, as far as I'm aware, what they said in their announcement was that there was buyout issues because he was still under phase.
Right.
Presumably the org didn't want to pay a fuck ton for like a coach that maybe they couldn't see the value from because their champs performance wasn't that good. I think that might be another scenario where the coach and the team, the players and the team misaligned, but this time the players are actually the one that wants the coach and the team doesn't in that sense because they had the buyout. That's one of the things that they listed at the time. So I definitely think they're trending in that direction. But yeah, it's absolutely inevitable. One of the things I was giggling at though before when you were talking about players and like everyone thinking it should be player first, it's one of the things again with the Valorant scene being so young. These big picture things just haven't been tackled at all. The Valorant champion skins last year brought in nearly $19 million for champions. They sell a skin pack. Pack. People like them. They're like $70 a pop.
That's mental.
And they brought in $19 million. And then that gets split 50-50. So 50% of it goes to the teams that participated at champions.
Okay.
And because I guess I've been in.
Wait a minute. Let me guess. Let me just guess. As someone, I don't know the story at all, Sideshow. My guess is going to be they think the player should get 100% of the money.
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
My God. How can this be real? How can this be real life?
Because I've been around in esports for a while, I've seen a lot of instances that the community has seen where players get fucked. And I understand you want to stick up for the players there. Yeah. But also I think the fans don't understand anything about how the finances of organizations work in the slightest. Yes. Because it can be a bit opaque even for us. Like even when we've worked in esports for ages, like trying to figure out like why an org made a certain decision or where the funding is coming from or how they're involved in this. Like it actually is like it takes a bit of research to be able to crack those things open. It's not intuitive. And so there was an article that went through the splits that various teams got. And essentially it's just a PR nightmare for the orgs. Because if they want to take teams were getting roasted for taking 50%. And I think there are organizations in smaller regions, like the Southeast Asian regions, that took 90%, which was X10, the Padapan's team. It was reported that they took 100, but it came out afterwards that they actually only took 90%. So maybe that's too far in the other direction, but also these orgs, that is their bonus for investing in the scene, right? Of like, you invested in a scene, you paid the big money, you pay them salaries, they get you to the big tournament, you get your rewards for scouting correctly and helping your team achieve those kind of goals. And I think people just don't realize that the orgs themselves have to have some road towards being profitable. Otherwise, the entire venture falls to pieces.
They're also,
a big missing piece of the puzzle.
You obviously nailed it that it's youth and naivety. And also, I thought a very key point you made was even when you're in the industry, it also depends which team or region we're talking about. Like maybe I know in League of Legends what the players get paid in NA, for example, but maybe I don't in Overwatch know what a European player makes right now. This is all complicated, obviously, like trade secret level shit that you have to have the contacts to get the info on. But when you do know the basics, here's the problem if you're a fan, essentially. I always did it jokingly, just because you know where I'm coming from on this topic, right? What I joked about is people will always frame it. I actually think for real what they're doing is this, Sideshow. They think, sadly, right, company, so a team is like a company, and a company is like, it's like fucking Coca-Cola, isn't it? Or Amazon. It's like an enormous faceless company. It's just making millions of dollars off them and just exploiting them all. And I always say, you know, when people use like the literal like Marxist communist revolutionary type lingo terminology, you know what they'll say, like, you know, workers of the world unite, or exploiting the workers and owning the means of production, or stuff. You do realise none of that would make any sense if you applied it to this situation. Because if I'm paying thousands and thousands of tens of thousands every month to people in salary, now listen, unless I have, like Sancho's saying, something like the skin that can generate millions back, essentially, spoiler, most of those orgs are losing money to have a Valorant team. They're just using their investment to keep themselves going in the short term, right? So what that means, guys, think it through, is who are they exploiting? They're exploiting themselves and their own investors, you idiot. That's the person who's losing the money. There isn't that there's a giant Scrooge McDuck vault of money and they only give the player one little gold coin and they keep the whole vault. There is no vault. They spent the vault to give to the player, And then your logic goes, workers of the world rise up. Rise up for what? If you were to grab the means of production, you would just lose your money. There is no money. The money's just a fucking thing coming in. At the moment, it's the lack. Yeah, exactly.
This is why I love esports, because it is just eating the rich from the very beginning.
For real.
The rich are funneling their money in, and we're just living off it.
Yeah. But I think also, like, the other thing that you have to remember specifically with Valorant is Valorant's not a franchise league. So, like, there is no real revenue share program or anything like you get from something like, the
LEC or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Or like in how the fuck the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League did it. And I mean, even Rainbow Six, which isn't a franchise league, has a very effective revenue share program, but Valorant doesn't have that. So like that is how a lot of organizations that do buy into franchise leagues and decide to go into franchise leagues do so because there is actually some way to make money from it. Like that's why franchise leagues really exist. And so this being the sort of first like toe in the water for Valorant, for them to actually have a system where there is some kind of revenue share for not even every team, but just the teams who are going to champions. Like, yeah, they need to get some money from it. Like, none of this exists, So yeah, I always find that like so bizarre.
I mean, I'd quite like it if they, took the gamble here where they said something like, we will pay you just X flat rate as a bonus for getting our team to champions, but we, the org, take 100% of the skins. And that way, as a player,
it's a good gamble.
You're like getting your flat bonus, but maybe the org is taking the risk on how much the player base actually buys the skins. Maybe it's a really shit skin pack and they don't get more than they did last year. Yeah. And so they're the org themselves are taking the gamble rather than the player being put in a position where they have to try and negotiate a percentage split of that, which only the best are going to be able to do. Like, I think there's ways of being able to make this. For example, like giving 100% of the prize money to the players and then, only keeping a portion of the skin revenue. There's a ton of different ways to do it. But also, I mean, people are just trying to, I'm waiting for the shit fest when people get left out in the cold on any potential franchise league, because that is always entertaining too.
Also, I'll say to one side, that will be hilarious, by the way. That'll be an amazing one. But I'll just say this: the one thing as well that
Gio, it's so
I get it.
I think a lot of fans also don't appreciate that aspect as well, which is like when you have these items in the game, right? Let's be real. There are certain players, like whoever the best player in the world is, by your opinion, that player might actually, in the short term, bring more attention to his org than his org does to him. But I'm sorry, if you join a team with an enormous name, like Optic is an obvious example, where there is literally a baked-in fan base, who I can tell you from CS, they do literally go over to the other games and sort of like pay slight attention to if Optic has people in games they don't even follow, like CS when that began. So as a result, like, there's also a degree to which some of the reason why people are buying those skins, etc., is to do with the org as well. It's not just you, the player. Yeah. Like, so in the same senses, right? If that player played for a tiny org, he wouldn't get as much money from the skin, would he? So and that's why, to me, there has to be some sort of a split. It just makes sense. By the way, we have the same thing in CSGO. You have the stickers when you came to the majors, which started out the same way. Some orgs took all the money because they're like, it's my logo or whatever. Then some players demanded, like, but we have to have it all. So then for a while, the meta became like, the way that you made your offer to a new set of players to join your org was you said, we'll just give you all the sticker money or 90% of it or whatever. So it became like a negotiating factor. But I agree. And the problem with this as well is the reason that's not a big deal in CSGO anymore is because now the rest of the industry scaled up. Valorant's so fresh that if you look at how much people are shelling out on the salaries, some of those orgs are going to be in deep shit if they can't take any of that skin money. Because as we say, there's no real other revenue models outside of their own sponsorships and their own merchandise in their personal org. There's not really many ways at the moment to get back from the fans.
I feel like cycles back to the 100 Thieves being in deep shit if they don't make it to champions. Because they're probably an org that's spending a decent amount of money and don't really have like
one hoodie drop, Gio. One hoodie drop and they get all of that back. Don't worry about it. Nadeshot's cooking it up in the background.
That's true.
Yeah, but their problem is they keep having to burn all the old merch as all the old player names on. They haven't got any business players anymore, so
I like
there
it.
You go. There you go.
I like it.
Think about how many warehouses they've had to. No, the joke is there's just loads of kids in Africa wearing 100 Thieves Steel jersey in it. Like fucking, look at this new drip I've got.
That's what they do with the Super Bowl ones, isn't it?
That's real. But do you know, by the way, Gio, there's two details I'm going to tell you now that'll blow your mind. One, it is real that because logically, right, I don't know if you know this, but the second someone wins the Super Bowl, they have a T-shirt ready for you that says your team champion of that Super Bowl. Well, the premise obviously goes, what do they do with the other teams?
Right.
What they do with the other teams for real is send them to Africa for people to wear who are poor. And so the joke is, if you ever go there really are people wearing, like the current Super Bowl, there'll be someone wearing like a Bengals Super Bowl champions jersey, even though they never won the Super Bowl. Well, this is the thing. People don't know it, but it is actually true for esports, by the way, because Cloud9 had this happen to them 1 year Sideshow. They had 1 year they didn't go to Worlds, but because they dominated and won the spring split, they made a jersey that was like Cloud9 going to Worlds for that year. And then I said it jokingly on a podcast, but Jack just basically had to be like, yeah, I did have to just get rid of loads of those. Like, so that's the, like, listen, I'm obviously joking about 100 Thieves. I don't imagine they really did send their stuff to Africa. For a start off, I don't think Nadeshot can even point to it on a map. But aside from that, listen, you have to understand, I'm actually Nadeshot's OG. That's what people won't understand this. You're all thinking, right, just slandering him. Nate, in fact, Nadeshot be holding my fucking pocket if we were at an esports awards now. Just calm down. You all are too fresh in the scene. You have to understand that. He knows which way his bread's buttered.
I'd be concerned if there's someone in esports that you're not slandering in a
That's true.
way.
Exactly, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I did it in a kind way when I sort of tagged you on it earlier, but it's all right. Right, let's move on then, because here's a topic I definitely want to talk about, which is, right, when it comes to this idea, Sideshow, sorry, when it comes to this idea of how Riot actually deals with like disciplinary issues in Valorant, I want to get your take on this, mate, because the other thing that's interesting is, since you come from TF2, if people don't know, that's a game that effectively the game dev just pretended that was like the red-headed stepkid locked in the attic, and they were all just like, the attic is our world, this is Plato's cave, this is esports. So obviously you come like I do from a game where like you're like, wow, the game dev be involved, you know, we in the community are going to figure it out, right? Like the TO has to ban him, or let's witch hunt this fucker. What do you think about the way Riot's handled it? Because obviously that was a big thing they had in League of Legends, if people don't know. If something happened, a player said something naughty, there was a dispute, someone poached a player, broke a rule, they would come out, they'd do a post, it was like competitive ruling, and then they say like, you know, sort of the decree of what they're going to do to you and what the punishment is. And in theory there's an appeals process, but my joke is I think that just goes in the recycle bin at Riot fucking offices, and they just do whatever they want anyway, because spoiler, it's their game dev, they are the gods of this they are the tiny golden gods of Valorant. So what do you think about the approach they've been taking in Valorant? Because that's one area, by the way, I was actually also very worried about a lot of my CS mates coming to the game, because they're coming from a game in CSGO where you can just like hard flame the game dev and you know nothing will ever happen to you. And I was like, boys, you don't know what world you're walking into in a Riot game. I told some of them, like, even the talent, like, listen, it's going to sound mad I'm telling you this, but don't flame the game dev because you're not going to get hired, like, it's going to be over. So what have you thought about their approach overall? Because they have their own approach to it. I wonder how people are taking it so far.
Well, I haven't seen anything petty and vindictive like that as of yet. So, you know, jury's out in that regard. But I think there's a lot of stuff that they've really missed in the first couple of years. I think this foundation that they've set may end up coming back to bite them. I think particularly with they've been extremely hands-off with any match-fixing allegations for people that have come from CS, of course.
Yes.
But, I mean, I think everybody was waiting for the ESIC report that has just vanished. And so...
All I'll say on that is it's implied behind the scenes among the people who really know this stuff in CSGO that, like, there's maybe, like, an unofficial soft agreement among, like, Team Orgs and potentially Riot that if they do a franchise league, they might just ban those match fixers. I think it's one of those things where I don't know if they're going to publicly come out with it, Sideshow. I think it's might be one of those things where they're going to handle it, like, behind closed doors or something. Yeah, certainly there's no public messaging on that. Like, no one knows where they're at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's no public messaging whatsoever. But also, I think but it doesn't set the like hardline precedent if you handle it behind closed doors that kind of stuff is unacceptable. True. And it will rear its head in Valorant. It's absolutely inevitable that things like this will happen.
Yes.
And on top of that too, you have they literally had. Do you remember the Turkish money laundering scandal through Twitch?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You had the potential best player in the game and the player and team won at Champions actually implicated in that, and to a fairly small degree compared to the size that it could have been for a scandal like that, right? But it's still a player has been directly implicated in it, and there was the only communication that came from them was we're going to wait until Twitch Turkey provides us more information, and then it just disappears. And this now seems to me to be a running theme with the way that Riot handles big stuff, is just they post like, we'll see what's happening, and then they just quietly either deal with it behind closed doors or don't deal with it at all. It's impossible to tell from your outside POV. And then with smaller stuff, they have horrendously odd rulings for infractions. Like at the moment, there's like small exploits that end up getting punished in vastly different ways depending on which region you're playing in.
By the way, a very famous thing about Riot as well is like each judgment only has an internal coherency to that one judgment.
Yes.
As in, if you were to try and figure out like, well, what's the rules here? Like, what does doing A mean that happens to me? It tends to change depending on who the person is. Like you say, what year it is, like there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason often to me. Yeah, it's hard to figure out. Like, is this twice as bad as what what I mean? Like, you can't. Yeah. Sometimes the scale's off to me.
So their communication has been very clear. Your whole thing with like they post their competitive ruling thing. That happens with the small infractions. If someone exploits something that's clearly in the rules, then they post something. Does the ruling make sense? No, it's frequently off by a massive degree. But I think part of the issue here is for larger things, they post something and then just let it slide away. One of the recent things was T1 having their coach communicate with them via private DMs. Oh, yeah. And then there was footage of G2's coach being in their voice communication with them. And that didn't really get any public, I don't want to say public attention because it did from the community, but public attention from Riot or the tournament organizer or anything. And that, to me, is the level of competitive integrity problem where you need to be trying to stamp it out early because otherwise everyone is doing it. And I've had coaches come and tell me, coaches that have been implicated in stuff come and tell me, everyone is doing this, man. You look at every VOD, everyone is doing it. And if that's the degree to which it's happening, of course, the devs put in a weird situation where you don't want to have to ban everybody, but you need to be hardline with some things. Otherwise, I can see the same. They had the opportunity to learn from CS. CS has had horrendous coaching bug scandal recently that just decimated many teams, or like not teams, but like the community's perception of how valid certain online results were just utterly destroyed.
Even the notion of
match
who
fixing
pros
everything.
are. Like basically, before that scandal happened, if you'd have asked a random fan, like a real fan, not like a total pleb, like a person who followed, let's say like Evil Geniuses was his favourite team for 5 years. Like if you asked someone like that, they would just tell you like, oh no, they would never cheat like that. Well, there was all the usual corp like that. Why would they risk their career and stuff? Whereas as it turned out, like it was like 37 coaches if people don't know. It wasn't like 2. Yeah. It was loads. And by the way, it ran the gamut. It was no-namers to like legendary, like, major winners and people who like were fucking like would be in the Hall of Fame. Like everyone was doing it for real. In fact, one of the problems with these areas that you're talking about, by the way, is this is a slippery slope, but this happened in CS. Another thing that happened in Counter-Strike at the end of 2020, the first online year, was we had a couple of instances where top teams on the stream, on their cameras, you could see that like, maybe they have a stream open in the background, so they're watching the stream 30 seconds delayed, or maybe someone could communicate info. And the problem, and this is why it's a really dodgy area, was even though individual tournament organisers, including the one I worked for, Flashpoint, if we found that, we took like individual action and like find the player, the team rather, like, like 10K, and you make a public statement, it's not allowed, blah, blah. The vibe in the industry, though, was really disturbing, which went like this. It's very difficult to enforce, so maybe there shouldn't be any rules. Which is like,
and that's the same thing that was being discussed recently with Valorant too. If you can't enforce it, with the coach thing, if you can't enforce it, then why can't the coaches just talk all the time?
Yeah.
But I think that's a horrendous slope to get down. I think the more barriers you put in place, the less likely people are to cheat, and the more you can be punitive once it actually comes to light. Yes. And I think that's much better than having the lack of enforceability change your entire direction of what coaches do in the game. I think that's a terrible idea to go down, but it's a popular sentiment at the moment because online gameplay is fundamentally flawed. And it's all really that Valorant has known. If you were good at online, you would probably be in the contention for like 4th best in the world right now. If you just dominated everything online, but then flopped at LAN, people would still think of you as like I don't know, maybe top 4 is too generous, but top 8 team, absolutely.
That's definitely a weird part about Valorant if you think about it, because I actually can't think of any game that's comparable right now, dude, where the joke is you actually could be someone who is only an onliner, but you could get to the LAN. So there aren't many games, there aren't many esports scenes that have that structure. So that's kind of like some old school throwback shit to like the early 2000s or something, mate. You know,
it's because Valorant's a pandemic baby.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's we kind of yet to know what Valorant is outside of that. Outside of that's kind of structure.
We have to wait for the LAN to see the players unmasked. See who they actually really are. There you go.
You also
see if they can breathe that rarefied air of the land. I'll keep it going. I'll extend it in metaphor to become really uncomfortable. Keep going.
You were talking about the difference between LAN and online as well, and we've still never had a tournament with an audience. So that's, we've only had like 0.5 of a LAN where, sure, the game is different, the stakes are different, but you don't have the pressure of a crowd and the audio problems of a crowd and all of that stuff that also adds to people either overperforming or underperforming when it comes to those big pressure environments. So that is something I'm really looking forward to across 2022. I think VCT Korea just announced that they're going to have an audience.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw the clip. Yeah.
And that's the old like Apex studio.
Yeah, it'll be banging.
Yeah. I think that's going to be
the old
fantastic.
OGN one that got sold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so jealous. I always wanted that was one thing when I first got into esports. I was always like, I would love to just do one thing with OGN. And then obviously the whole thing got shut down. So I was always gutted. But the fact they're going to be using that in Valorant is so exciting, just from like a legacy perspective.
Nostalgia, all that shit.
Yeah. No, that's going to be cool. But it will be really interesting to see them have an audience. Like, it was very strange at Masters, like, no, we were like one of like 5 people in the room, like watching like everything happen on the stage, which is why I kept posting videos on Twitter, because I was like, it was just a very bizarre experience, and just how much better it would have been with like a crowd would have been so sick.
Yeah, because the other thing to say as well is this is actually something we just went through in CSGO. We almost like tested so we can tell you guys how it works. Basically, there always was like a competitive ladder. Obviously, like the most simple version is, are you good online, and then do you get good on LAN? Because obviously you have to go through being online to become a LAN player. And it's just like, it's like chapters in your career. You have to go through that to get to the next stage. But what we've recently found in CSGO particularly is even just a LAN, this is why I think it's relevant to Valorant for when you get a crowd. Even just a LAN is very different from the same LAN with a crowd of people in the room. Like the crowd is the final frontier. Because if people don't know, in CSGO, during the online period at the beginning of last year, we actually had, funnily enough, it's just like the same as in your game, Gambit. The Russian Gambit team became they were literally the number 1 team in CSGO, and online, the eye test was like they were one of the best teams to ever play Counter-Strike. The problem they had was, when they went to the LANs, like the major, they were still a good team. They were maybe like, the 4th or 5th best team. They were still quality, and they could make the semis or something like that. But you saw, as soon as the crowd element got involved, that was the one part they had no experience of, because they're basically players who came up in the online era. So whereas every other team to some extent at the top in CS, has some old player that was around a couple of years ago, or just as someone who's a super veteran, you saw that actually like it takes essentially that you have to put in a certain amount of reps in front of crowds before your whole team is going to be comfortable. Maybe 1 or 2 you get lucky and you're just the guy who's just naturally cool. But that's why, to me, also, it's got to suck a little bit for the people who did come over from CSGO and other pro games, because you're not really getting to flex that element of your toolkit, as it were. Like, you would be cool under pressure. You would play a block. You could make a call when the crowd's there. The new guy might not be able to, So at the moment, you've evened the playing field.
You want an exact example of this, actually? 100 Thieves played at NALCQ, which was the last chance qualifier tournament to get you to Champions. And it started out as a LAN, and then everything exploded. Players started getting COVID, etc. The whole thing had to be cancelled. And they went, from what I remember, they went 2-0 in the online, in the LAN portion. They were winning. I don't want to say they were dominating, but from what I remember, the results were pretty significantly like one-sided. It was them easily winning their games on LAN. And then it gets delayed. They went back to online and just went 0-2 and lost to teams that were you weren't expecting them to lose to, especially Rise. They lost to Cloud9 in the second one, but they lost to Rise when they were on a hot streak, and it felt very much watching it like like they had been cooled off. Either their form was great at the LAN, or what I think is more likely, they were just better in that scenario than they were online because of the player experience that they had.
It is one thing as well that I think is a potentially interesting thing that will come about is not just talking about like teams that don't have like LAN experience, but very specifically, a lot of the youngest players in Valorant are like the duelists. They're like jet players, you know, they're young rookie gunners who are the star players for these teams. Like, how much is the star power of those teams going to change if they get on a stage and like that's their player who has no experience playing in front of however many tens of thousands of people or whatever? Like, is that gonna, like, because I think that role specifically, it's not necessarily the most important role. In fact, I would argue it's not, but like, it's the role that people are going to be the most hyped to see and expecting the most from, because it's the most flashy, right? And I think that could be a big thing for all these, like, they're like, this is their induction into esports, but they've only ever known it to be online or at best at a crowdless LAN.
I was keeping track of that actually at Champions. I had a spreadsheet that was comparing people's stats online to people's stats at LAN. Yeah. So I just keep it. Who is the most different? Let me look, actually. So the most different, okay, I've just pulled it up, was Durka, who is a player from Fnatic who overperformed. So like that was a big overperformance. The biggest underperformance was equivalent to, actually, wait there. No, sorry, that's
which NA player was it?
Sorry, I'm ranking it by best, so that's not true. Let me look at. Okay, so when you look at the like largest differences, the largest differences were people underperforming, which makes sense, right? Because it's always easier to shit the bed and do absolutely nothing. But they were from teams that just got slammed as well. So the problem with looking at stats like that is that it's like the team that dominated Japan, Crazy Raccoon, or not dominated, there was 2 good teams in Japan at the time, or like okay teams. But once they get to the online stage, they're just going to get destroyed. So they've done it insanely well all the time online because they're in a bad region. They come to the Champions tournament and get destroyed. So that's not so much the players choking as they just weren't ready for that level of competition. But if you're looking at like big players where a lot was expected of them, I think you're looking at like Victor from Team Envy, who was like negative 24%. Compared to his just the basic stat of like ACS, which is their boiled up stat that they use. But that would also make sense because the guy had COVID when he was playing in Champions. He said he was really sick during that period of time. So we didn't realize how sick he was. We were watching it and we were like, fuck, this is a mad underperformance from this guy. Holy crap. And then it comes out afterwards, like the guy's got COVID and we were like, okay, but how ill actually was he? Because you can get it really mild.
You can never know exactly.
Too much. And apparently he was pretty sick. And so I look at that now and I'm like, right, might have been a bit
bad
unfair on him while the tournament was going on, actually. But yeah, then there was like, there's like a couple of players from like Fnatic or Vision Strikers where they didn't perform as well as they were doing online. But some of that, again, is because they were just like the Vision Strikers team was dominating online and then comes to Champions. So it's difficult to tell all of the time when you're looking at Valorant stats because the teams don't get all boiled up very often. They just tend to like dominate their own region and then see if they can hang with the big boys when it actually happens 3 times a year.
Because the duelist that I remember getting like the LAN buff was Kellogg's, but that was at Masters, not at Champs, because CG2 weren't there. But again, like that wasn't in front of a crowd. So like, A, would that be the same? And B, would Kellogg's be on a team that would actually make it to a LAN? Because he's obviously kind of gone down to a team that's not in the VCT at the moment. So
and he's a very young guy. He's a young guy that like thrives from that like showmanship element too, which is often a good, I think that's normally a good indicator that somebody's gonna be able to perform under pressure when they actually have that like charismatic showmanship element to them. Those are the people that tend to thrive in those scenarios because they actually enjoy having eyes on them. It fires them up.
The other convo, by the way, along with do we need coaches, that has to happen in every big esports game, by the way, it goes like this. Do you think Koreans can actually play this game, though? Are they only good at StarCraft? Because, by the way, if people don't know, that was the first Euroma show with Monty and fucking Overwatch. It was me and Monty explaining to Western pros, like, no, I know you're really good, but, like, they're going to be better than you. So, like, no, but why would they, though? Because when I went at this tournament, I beat them. I was like, listen, my sweet summer child, that's not the way it's going to be, but okay, you just wait. Yeah. I even said at the beginning, I nailed this at the beginning of Watch. I actually did a video Sideshow where I actually counted in season 1 of Overwatch League how many Korean players there were, and then I showed that in season 2, you know, it went up to like half half the league. And then I said it's only going to go more because logically, when you have really good Koreans, they're going to go, well, I know another really good Korean, why don't we recruit him? And so the premise goes like this, right? Spoiler, that's probably not going to happen in Valorant because the difference, and this is a key thing a lot of people don't understand who are from the West, right? Because Korea culturally is very homogenous. They all like basically the same shit everyone else is into. Whatever's popular, everyone just gets attracted to that. And everyone's watching the same TV show, the same singers are super insanely popular. It works with video games. What happens is video games in Korea, it's not just that the game has to be released. It has to be a cultural phenomenon. Otherwise, you never get like the Korean effect that we got in Overwatch, for example, where basically after a couple of seasons, every team had Koreans, if not mostly Koreans, if not sometimes whole Korean teams, even though in theory it was, it was a world league. It could be anyone from anywhere, right? That probably, as far as I can tell, isn't going to, like, we'll probably actually have someone like Wolf on a future episode. We can talk more explicitly. But as far as I can tell, based on like PC bang numbers and stuff, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case with Valorant. It looks like you're more akin to the situation we had in Counter-Strike, where it's like, as with Vision Strikers, you can get a couple of teams of people, often like in Vision Strikers cases, people with past history in the franchise, so they're already like skilled players, and essentially if they practice really diligently and sort of like in a very, I would say, creative manner, because they don't have enough good talent around them necessarily to practice against like you do in the other regions. If they do an amazing job, maybe one or two of those teams could go international and be like a dark horse. I get the vibe that's like the best you can currently hope for from Korea. If you're hoping it's going to be like League of Legends or Overwatch and they're just going to be the kings of the game, and it doesn't seem like there's enough people into the game, unfortunately. It doesn't seem like it's taken off like even Overwatch did in the first couple of years.
Yeah, I think the root cause of that is frequently discussed as being like the Vanguard system that didn't really work with PC bongs.
Exactly.
I don't know the validity of that. I haven't been in Korea. I can't speak to like whether it got
But I will just say, it really is the case in Korea that if you don't make it in the PC bang, it just won't be a widespread game because so many people are going there to play. Yeah.
And presumably that should get lessened as time goes on, as more people get home equipment. But I think it still is, at least it seems to be, a pretty good indicator still. Because when you look at their open qualification for this, they only got 42 teams that signed up. And that's, I mean, in fact, it speaks to how incredibly talented the like top end of Korea is, that they can make even one, and currently there are two teams that would be internationally competitive. In the top 10, I think there are currently two teams. Maybe top 10 is too generous, actually. But it's somewhere around there. There'd be at least one team in the top 10 right now, and I think there might be two from Korea.
That's fair.
And that, to me, is bonkers when you consider there's only 42 teams that have signed up. You're talking about 210 players there, the minimum. But yeah, that's your rough estimate, which is insane. And people who are more tapped in with the Korean scene have countered that point a little bit by saying that part of the reason the numbers signing up are low is because you have to commit to a LAN. You're in a pandemic environment, and you're being asked, if you qualify, you must attend the LAN. And so in order to qualify, you have to be happy with like doing that, traveling.
Yeah, I will say,
playing in the LAN environment.
If people don't know culturally, like already, I'll give you a quick example. When I was in Korea years before there was anything like COVID going around, etc., people already, if they got a cold, used to wear those masks anyway. So if people don't know, Korea already as a country is like I would have said back then, obviously not on this particular topic, I would have said back then they were a little bit hypochondriac, like they were almost over concerned with health, and like you know this sideshow. The joke is half the time someone that gets benched for a week, they would just always lie and say he was ill for like 2 weeks or something. It happened so many times in Overwatch, it was fucking mental. Like, or they just didn't want to play that week, and they would always just say, I'm ill, and have some reason. Whereas like that's a bit weird in the West that you'd be ill for like a week and just miss games. So all I'll say is like I could actually totally imagine if you told them it's for a LAN, and also eventually it qualifies you to go abroad. To be fair, right now, a lot of Koreans might not be into that, to be fair.
Yeah, so it's possible that those numbers will get bigger. Go on.
I just wanted to add, this is why I think the UK would be an excellent choice for the next Valorant LAN, because, I mean, of the three of us, only I actually still live here, despite us all being British. We have no COVID restrictions anymore in this country. So come and have a LAN, get everyone in, and it doesn't matter. Like, you're fine. There you go. Easy.
And to be fair, Gio's not even living out of choice. She's trying to get the fuck out too, so...
That's true.
I don't know what sort of advertisement this is for the UK, but whatever.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking about that. I mean, I think that the lack of restrictions was a big sticking point for a lot of people in the UK for a while. But yeah, I suppose that's a bonus factor. But yeah, Korea is actually in a good spot right now, considering it's not going to explode like you're saying, Thorin. I don't think that's very likely, just due to the lack of people that are interested in signing up for the big events. But frankly, for the amount of people that are involved, the fact that they do have those two competitive teams, and they actually have a rivalry brewing currently. There are like 3 competitive teams, but there's 2 that are clearly better. And there's now some serious competition in the region. I think it's poised to improve. And I really just wish that there were more international tournaments so that they had more chances to get that level of improvement. Because every time there's a LAN event, they go back and you can see their domestic play shifting. They add new like agents into their meta, and they
have to learn the meta, of course.
They work on different like pacing as well. They used to be like mega tactical, very fast paced, didn't really have any slow rounding or defaulting at all. And now they've just, I mean, it's come across leaps and bounds. They're still the best tactical region in the world, but they've now added the necessary slower pace to be able to, you know, actually function as a team. Whereas previously they were just getting dismantled because they were too readable. The other region that's interesting too is China, because that's about to, they just had a big Chinese tournament with like all of the top teams as far as we could tell. And that region is poised, presumably, to release the game officially soon. There's been like stirrings on Weibo for a while about like the Valorant being released, but the Chinese government has been blocking any new game releases as part of their as a like war on soy boy culture or whatever the fuck is going on in China, because they're just absolute madness happening over there. Anyway, there's a tournament that's currently going on, and should it take off in that region, that would be another one to keep a serious eye on, because I think it's the kind of game that both Korean and Chinese teams would be fantastic at.
Oh, God. But it would be like an entirely different fucking game. If it's anything like Chinese Overwatch, where they just you'd have like crazy shit, but they would like just do it so well. Yes. I just think it'd be entertaining more than anything. You know, I'm sure there would be amazing teams. I'm not doubting that. But even if they were all shit, I'd still want to watch it, just because of the way that Chinese teams like approach video games. Yes. It's just always so creative.
I mean, part of the beauty is because they have so many people there in an absolute sense. The game actually, unlike in the Korean example, because people forget, Korea population-wise compared to China is nowhere near. Like, it's not even in the same fucking ballpark. Yeah, it's just that Koreans are so exceptionally good at games. Somehow, like, on the actual competitive level, we can compare those two, because that's how epically good. But the good thing about China is, even if the game is niche in release there could still be enough people to have a vibrant scene, because how many bazillion people live there. So that is also why, to Gio's point, though, in every esports game I'm aware of where China has enough people play the game, they also get this really weird thing where their whole scene becomes a complete bubble, and their meta is like barely even at all related to the West, because they don't watch the West, they don't give a fuck, they just care about their shit. And then there's so many players and teams, they can just essentially they invent their own way and protocols and logic as to what you do. And that's why essentially, if you then get the international competition, it's mega interesting to see one of those teams come over that's had no contact with the Western squads. Like, they could low-key, every now and then, this is happening in League of Legends, it turns out you thought they were the ones that they're behind on the meta. It's like, actually, they figured out the meta, you're the one that's behind. That happens sometimes, you never know.
It did take them 5 years to get to that point in Overwatch, though, which is criminally slow. I mean,
it was wild.
China's fantastic at the moment in Overwatch. 2021 and 2022 have been amazing years for Chinese Overwatch. But before that, it was a bit of a joke, honestly, because of the lack of development within the region. They didn't have like the structure, the coaches, the even the player base. Actually, just some of the roles didn't look very good. So I don't know what's required to speed that process up. But if it's in any way similar, Valorant 2 is going to be out by the time they're a region to be like cracking into international wins.
Right, here's the topic.
Chinese Overwatch was weird. I was just going to say Chinese Overwatch was weird because it felt like there would be a lot of like really talented individuals, but then they were all just like thrown into a blender, which was like a team, is, you know, what they'd slap on the front of that. And then you just sort of like watch them have at each other. And it wasn't, I mean, I kind of stopped really paying attention to Overwatch at the start of 2020 when I started working in Rainbow Six instead. But I remember like when the 3 new Chinese like franchises came in and they actually started picking up more Chinese players into the Overwatch League, seeing a lot of those players transition into that more structured environment, like it was like night and day from like the actual just like Chinese contender scene.
All I'm going to say is if someone is a Valorant fan, they're immediately like, it feels like Gio's about to go out for a fucking packet of cigarettes like she does every 2 years and go, I'll be back later. And then she just goes to another game. Like, where's Gio? Like, where is Gio? Like, because then we get a track of this. So it was Overwatch. Then a year later, it was like fucking Rainbow Six. Then it's like, what is it? Do you average like a year and a half in every game or something? What's the logic?
Multi-talented. That's the correct one.
Right, there you go. My bad. Yes, my bad.
Let's not pretend like I'm the only person in this call who has like been involved in more than one game.
All right.
Like, you were like, oh yeah, you know, Sideshow, he's an OG, he was in TF2. Why the fuck do I get that treatment?
Okay. Because he was just putting in years when there was nothing even to gain from it. He was just a fucking boomer in the northeast of England.
I didn't even know. I was a 15-year-old just playing a video game. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. There was no grand plan at that time.
No. Right, what about this though? Since we've been having this discussion that we sort of gradually moved in from the outskirts on the regions, let's just do the obvious topic that hurts people's feelings, which goes, which region will be the best by the end of the year? Gio? Any inklings? Any sentiment? Who do you think will be the best region at the end of this year?
Okay, so the cop-out that I'm going to preface it with is I think it's hard. A, we're about to go into a meta shift, and I don't know who's going to compare next week.
Yeah, of course.
But B, it's hard to compare, for me, EU with NA until we've seen them play each other internationally at the first LAN. But I think that NA right now have a really nice, or at least the top end of NA right now have a really nice balance of like being tactically proficient and have more like star play, whereas I think EU are like tactically proficient, but you have less of that star play. And I think putting both of them together on NA, for me at the moment, gives them a bit of an edge, but then obviously everything could like go to shit like next week, so.
Yeah, it's an intriguing time to have that conversation because it's so difficult to answer. I mean, just thinking about the history of Valorant, the North American teams were ahead early on.
No, the classic esports trope you'll notice.
Sure. And then EMEA definitely caught up and overtook them by the end of the year. But you also had a resurgence from some of the smaller regions. Like a Champions crew from LATAM really impressed people. Yeah. And you also had 2 Southeast Asian teams actually make the quarters in a weird twist. I think that North America currently looks really good. The problem to me, and the thing that gets me scared, is that there isn't one team that stands out. And normally you can tell which region is, or not which region, but which the forerunner is going to be a little while out because they look so much better than everyone else. And that doesn't exist in North America right now. There's like 4 teams, maybe 3 teams that are really vying, 4, that are really vying for that top spot. And it isn't clear who's at the top of that pack. Over in Europe, though, too, the reason I'm hesitant to rule them out of being, the best region, obviously they were the best region at the end of the year. They had, Gambit, Ascend, 2 best teams in the world for that. Liquid as well were fantastic over the course of the year. They actually don't look too hot at the moment. I mean, Ascend, Gambit, Liquid, the 3 teams there, they're doing fine, but they're not blowing me away. I don't know whether they have to. I think that the EMEA seems like the kind of region where they just chill for a while. Then on the run up to the big games, they put in all of the effort. Whereas the North American teams start really hot and then they fizzle out as things get deeper into the tournament. So I'm concerned as all we've seen so far this year is group stage. It's like 2.5 months into the year, and we haven't actually had any big games by which to measure a level of success. I think it's between North America and Europe, though. There are certainly standout teams in other regions. Brazil has a super team right now that could definitely compete. Korea has 2, and obviously there's still crew from LATAM, but I think you're definitely looking at North America and Europe still battling for that top spot. I would be leaning North America right now, but I think it's just because Europe haven't shown their cards yet.
I agree with, and that's actually why I only mentioned EU and NA, because I agree there are like good teams from other regions, but I think if you're talking about the region as a whole, then obviously like the heavy hitters are EU and NA. One thing that so I haven't watched anywhere near as much EU as NA in this stage. So that's just like my disclaimer before I say this. But one thing that I will be interested to see, I guess, when we see the first international competition, and specifically between these two regions, is, to me, it seems like NA have been way more proactive in like picking up things like, for example, I think the way that the top end of NA play KO at the moment is more developed than the way that the top end of EU play KO. I think that in EU, you're probably more likely to see a team that isn't going to bring a chamber. I think in NA, you're probably like going to see teams that are a little bit happier to play they just seem a little bit more like happy to just jump on what the kind of new development is. And that sort of resonates with me with when I did stage 3 of EU last year. Like at the beginning of it, there was still a number of teams that were very reluctant to switch from Omen to Astra because they were comfortable with Omen. And I wonder about like how that's going to, I mean, it might not even be like a huge factor when it comes to international competition. And it could end up being how we see this development of different regional preferences for their playstyles and things like that. But it's just, I don't know, something that I found in, like when I was watching this G2 Ascend game from this weekend, like I felt like Zeke and Hoodie, who were each playing KO in that series on Ascent, like it just didn't look as good as like how you would expect someone like Zeppa to be playing KO, or like Victor to be playing KO. So things like that are also like kind of stand out to me a little bit, as like maybe NA just being more happy to jump on those things maybe puts them a little bit further forward. There's still some time before we're going to see these two regions go up against each other. And it could turn out that with the new meta and like just differences in play style, that it's less of like a direct counter or a direct advantage, and more of like finding ways to subvert each other's specific play style.
I agree with your comments there. I think North American teams look like they've adapted, look like they've taken more new ideas into their game for 2022, which is a weird thing to be saying, but I think it's the new breed of North American teams. It's Cloud9 with all of their players that got like good towards the dying portions of North American CS, and are now having their resurgence as true talents in the new game, and they're hungry for that level of success. And Optic too, I've just got to kick up their ass. I don't know what the fuck it was. I don't know if somebody in charge of their organization told them the placement where they got grouped at champions. I think North America has had a boot up their ass for some reason heading into 2022, and they have really started to add stuff in. The reason that I'm not as excited as I should be about that, though, is because big meta shift, and the EMEA teams still have time to be able to do all of that stuff, and they've shown a track record of being able to do it. But I think if you're going to take a punt on North America, it actually looks pretty good right now, which might not be evident to the fans who are following, you know, your Sentinels, 100 Thieves, TSM, who are like, all the old guard are dropping off from North America. But this new wave, they're not even that new, because we're talking Cloud9, who've been good for the last 6 months, but the new wave, if you want to put it like that, are doing extremely well currently.
I will say, though, that is one thing that currently, as much as it sucks for competitive elements, like how good actually are people, how do you rank people in the world, it makes for good talk show content. In theory, people just hypothetically have to shadow box all the teams and who's the best. Yeah. Along those lines, though, that's one thing also that makes Valorant really weird to me, mate, which is that currently, because there have been so few LANs, they are so spread out and they didn't have crowds and all this stuff. Like, there's not, unlike every other game, like, you can have a massive debate just about who the best player in Valorant is. Like in theory, that could be a world war itself. Right, who would you actually, who would you plump for at the moment in that title? Who's Sideshow's designated best player right now? Just your opinion. Who would you pick?
The criminal.
I hate this fucking question.
It is a really tough question, because
what's good is it'll also show where he's thinking about the game. I want to see his reasons more than the person.
No, I know it's mostly about the measurements rather than the end goal. But I think for me, it's so meta dependent. It really is, because if you looked at the period of time where there was a period of time where the duelists were just dominating. It felt like, you know, your best player in the world, it had to be a Jet player, because they were playing their own little mini game and they were just they were walking all over everybody. And the impact that single player was having was outsized compared to the rest of their team. that has not been the case across 2022 so far, and wasn't really the case towards the end of 2021 as well. So I'm not purely thinking in terms of those Jetstar duelists anymore. I also think towards the end of 2021, like Berlin onwards, a lot of people would have been talking about Nats. This
the Gambit player,
Gambit player, Russian Sentinel player who has just been phenomenal and was at that period of time clearly the best at getting value from his role. And it was such an outsized impact. Absolutely, he wrote the book on how to play both the Cypher and the Viper. The Viper is the main thing that he's known for. The problem is he's written the book, everyone else has read the book, and he's struggling to come up with the sequel. He's got that classic writer's block currently. And that kind of makes him a difficult candidate for the best player in the world currently too. I think I would be looking maybe to his teammate Chronicle, who had a ridiculous end to 2021, has demonstrated fantastic flexibility and insane individual talents. But I think my measurements for best player in the world early in the year, when you don't know what the meta is to look at those players who are going to be able to get you impact no matter what their role is. It doesn't matter whether they're in a bad meta for them or whether they have to fill or whether they have to do anything. Who's going to be providing you mega impact all the time? And I think Jet's a safe bet because she's always been in the meta. So you could go towards somebody like, I don't know, like a Yay or
which is who I'd pick.
A CNED or whoever.
Seems like the kit of that age, it means it'll always be relevant.
I hope they nerf it. I hope it's not, because it's just defined Valorant for the last 2 years, and they need to move away from it so that people can learn a new way to play the game. But anyway, that's a different topic. But yeah, you could pick a Jet, somebody like CNED or Yay, or you could go with somebody who's providing big value from a lesser position. And to me, that's Chronicle, who plays for Gambit. He is fantastic and a big reason that they were the best team of 2021, in my opinion.
So yeah, my two players that I really have in mind right now, I think your comments you made are really fair about like looking at what roles are like in the meta, and also who can provide so much value. So for me, the two players I'm looking at are in like totally different roles. One of them would be Yay, and a lot of that is mostly based on his current performance. Which again, like obviously like things could change with the meta, but I think that his role with the new meta is not necessarily going to change a ton. But the thing is also, like, especially when you look at the game that Optic played against V1 this weekend, in their last map on Icebox, which was the one where Optic really struggled, and Optic haven't had a ton of instances of them struggling this stage, so that's why I bring this up. A lot of like their success, especially on the attacking rounds, were reliant on Yay popping off. Like it was reliant on when everything else was kind of falling apart, or like their strategy wasn't working. Yay was the guy who like they looked to as the one thing that could maybe turn their rounds around. So that doesn't that in and of itself doesn't necessarily make him the best player in the world, but given how well Optic are doing at the moment, and that he is still like so good at what he does, that like in the times in which they're failing, he is still that is kind of his job, and that's his expectation, and it's a reasonable expectation as well for him to do that, I think is huge. And I think he's pretty consistent at what he does. The other person I would look to as well, another North American player, totally different role, is again based on the performance of this team right now, but potentially someone like Vanity, because I think that the coordination and the general like way that Cloud9 set themselves up and play is really, really good. And a lot of that's coming from Vanity, and like it's very easy to like overlook players who take on like controller roles as well, just because of the nature of the role. Sure. But I think that he's very good at it, and the way that the impeccable timing that team seems to have with a lot of the way that they play, I think can really be put down and credit given to Vanity for that.
Yeah, I think a very fair way of describing, as I said, essentially the secret there was they didn't just say a name and then just leave it like, oh my god, now everyone react. Like they just both gave their reasoning, didn't they? They explained. They explained the reasons why and how they saw the game, and you notice it was more about that angle. Because I'd even say that one thing you're going to have to watch out for in games like Valorant, by the way, I've seen this in way too many other games as well, is whenever you have a game where there are explicitly different roles based on the character you pick, not just like, I play this role in a team in the same way as in football. Technically, the roles are all in our brain. They're not real. We just decide to line up on that part of the pitch and agree to play like that. The problem you tend to have in games where there's literal characters, essentially, this is the problem. Anytime a character looks more flashy, they inherently get the MVPs, they get the wins. So the problem is this: I can see plenty of teams where the Jet will get all the praise because they did get the kills that you were watching on your observer feed. But what you have to ask yourself is, why was he set up to get all those kills? Like, why did he have the info? Why did someone go? You know what I mean? Like, essentially the problem there is what the other guy's job was is a bit masked by the fact that this guy has the freedom to do what he does.
I actually want to throw one more name into the hat as someone who really deserves a lot of praise right now, and that's Nukier from G2. I think that not only his personal performance is really good, he's also IGLing the team at the moment. Obviously with the changes they've had, he just deserves credit for the fact that he's, having to deal with that, but he's also nasty. A very versatile player. So obviously everyone was sharing this solo play on Bind where he took the freaking A side all by himself using the raised satchels in this incredible way to get mobility and these insane kills and whatever. But also when he's playing on Sova on other maps, for example, he might do on Ascent, and his way, I think, of supporting a lot of his teammates is really good. So I think Nukier definitely also deserves to have a mention in that conversation.
I agree with the fake version of Geo, the pleb version. It's definitely tense because I once saw this aim lab thing on a Twitter and it looked really sick, so it's got to be him, right? So yeah, I'm already a casual.
The amount of shit I got for flaming tens on the desk, I've so much shit for that. I also got a lot of people who were convinced that I had a really big crush on him, and that's why I was talking about him on the desk. So, there's people really like that guy.
Wow.
What a weird world we live in. I know.
I'll tell you another player actually who is hasn't been mentioned by us yet. I know that we're just kind of
we can name everyone by the end of this.
It's all right.
But another player, and this kind of, I just want to piggyback off your point a little bit where you're talking about setting up to star players too. I think at the moment in Valorant also, people tend to put their best players into those roles too. So you're putting somebody in the role where, as a Jet, a lot of what's good about the Jet is not only can you set the Jet up for success, but they can set themselves up. You can go and take an angle, get out. You can use your smoke to set yourself up where you don't really need a teammate to play off as much or a teammate to set you up. So there's a lot that Jets can kind of do for themselves, but you need somebody in that role that can deliver results, right? There's a lot of responsibility on you as the star player to deliver results, and you must deliver results. And I think a player that's been incredible at that, not just on the Jet, but whenever he's played other roles too, and currently he's been playing a lot of Viper, weirdly enough, even though that's never been what he's been playing, is Leaf for Cloud9. This guy might be the best player in North America currently. If I had to pick one player that I thought was going to be the best for 2022 in North America, it would be Leaf. And it would have been Leaf coming out of Champions too. This guy is crazy smart. He had one really bad opening game at LAN that made me think, oh, fuck, this guy's an onliner. And then he crushed the rest of the LAN event. So maybe that was just him getting the nerves out of his system or whatever. But he didn't have too much experience going into that LAN, and his end results made me feel pretty confident about him being able to return to those big matches. And he has been crushing it on every role they've put him on. He has a good IGL, like Gio was talking about, Vanity to kind of guide him and help him set up in those instances. And he's young enough and hungry enough because his success was not that large in CS, even though he was a known character, that I think he's going to be seriously hungry to win a trophy this year, whether that be, like one of the stages or champions. But I think that team is looking to win something, and Leaf is the primary force.
If people don't know, by the way, he is the guy where, spoiler, another trend you can get ready for, you've already enjoyed it, happened a few months ago, is Brazilian fans. So enjoy those. Enjoy those if you came from another game where there weren't many Brazilian fans.
I just worked in Brazilian Rainbow Six for a year.
True.
I'm very, very familiar.
But anyway, as you saw with that whole scandal with Zombs and all that shit, with all that stuff that was going down, right? If people don't know, Leaf's main claim to fame in CSGO, because he was actually on those teams, like the Vanity Steel type teams that were coming up in 2020, you know, his problem was he was like a very young player who like maybe had some potential, you know, and basically the whole scandal was he played a game online against the famous Brazilian players from MIBR, like Fallen and all those guys, and basically they just instantly accused him of cheating against them, and their fan base for like a whole week just went mental, like sending this guy death threats, like everything under the sun, mate. And by the way, these clips were like mad, like it was so, they weren't blatant at all, by the way. Like it was, people tried to make out like, you know, it's obvious, but it was more like you had to go in framed that you definitely cheated to see anything. Otherwise,
he's got good cheats in Valorant as well now. So
there you go. He's obviously a good coder, exactly. Multi-talented, exactly.
He is.
Well, I was just really curious to ask. So yeah, we were just talking about who we think is like necessarily one of the best players.
Go on.
But Josh, who is your favorite player to watch? Just like who you find the most interesting or entertaining to watch?
I don't really know what the answer to that question would be. Maybe what really gets me going is teams playing with like the little set plays, the little tactical stuff, the way that they will make a great mid-round call to go and like take an area of the map aggressively on defense, something like that, right? Those are the teams that I love watching, because I'm, you know, taking a look at the minimap. I'm like, wow, they're really lacking some info. Then there's some big utility play for them to push out of an area that gives them crazy info for them to be able to win the round. That's the stuff that I really love. So the people that I've been appreciating watching recently, Redgar, the IGL of Gambit, crazy good individual player, actually. Had some period of time last year where he looked like a weak fragger, and then, I don't know, the dude hit the gym or something, and now he's been putting up some serious numbers and is clearly the best IGL in the game until proven otherwise right now, because of all of the success that Gambit have had. And then Bone Cold, a Finnish guy who goes to a school for esports, which I've never heard of anywhere else, but he's like, I don't know whether he's the only pro gamer at the school that he's at, but like he goes specifically to a school that's for like people getting into gaming. And I did an interview with him where he was there at the school, and he's just such a wholesome, lovely guy. And then on top of that, picked up the IGL reins for Ascend, the team that won champions last year. And he was really struggling with it at the beginning. And he was overheating. He couldn't figure out the right calls in the right situations. That meant his individual game went off. And over time has developed into a strong player and one of those IGLs that will focus on the maps that they're good at, specifically like Bind and Split. He'll be focusing on making these like crucial mid-round plays to actually go and grab that info for them by putting down some like one-way smoke or going and flashing himself into B main and grabbing some information in the mid-round and use that to inform his calls. And I think those two have been very fun to watch right now because they demonstrate something that's going on in EMEA, which is that they're kind of, in a weird sense, moving away from the hardcore tactical element, which was previously very pervasive in EMEA, and much more towards having a massive toolkit that you can access at any time, and then using it in the correct situations in order to put your team in an advantage. You don't just start the round out by running some mad tactic. You maybe take an area of the map early, figure out what the reaction is from your opponent, and then pick the right tool out of your toolkit to respond to it. And so while it is flashy and cool, these like little set combos that they're coming out with, they're all being really well picked by their IGL. And I think that is a development that makes Europe look a little... They don't look like they're doing anything special currently, but it's the timing of it is all got really good. And I think that's something that I'm appreciating a lot right now with the European teams, even though the North American ones currently do look a lot flashier and have more players where, you know, they have like the jet pop off or whatever. Although I suppose Europe has that with CNET as well. Yeah, because I'm kind of like you where I'm not always going to be like really taken by like the jet player, because to me it's like, yeah, it's, you know, it's cool to see someone click heads, but that's not the thing that really I find interesting, or like, because
it's very one-dimensional for what it is, right? It's like I'm watching a guy shoot another guy, but I like seeing what it is, like what the setup is and how they're all working together. Bone Cold was actually a player who I was thinking of mentioning when we were talking about some of the best players just earlier, because he's really impressed me as well. And I have to agree, I really like the way that Ascend, in their game against G2, like things like, for example, I remember there was a round where they were like attacking onto the Ascent A site, and just the way they constantly had something holding back the defenders in heaven. Like it was like a nebula, and then it was a gravwell, and then it was a fragment, and then it was there was always something constantly there to help facilitate CNED like push in. And it was something that G2 actually didn't have in return, and Ascend on the defense being able to break in through heaven was a problem that was causing Mixwell to constantly like die when he was making his engagements. So I think, Ascend's ability to be able to do that is really cool. And obviously the leadership coming from Bone Cold is awesome. For me, like, I have to say the player who I enjoy watching the most, and it's someone who I've already mentioned today, is Zeppa. And that was ever since I'm watching Cloud9 at Champions, and it was their Breeze map where he, I suppose, from which KO on Breeze became popularized, right? And I just really liked it because, I remember like when EU last year tried to sort of pick up KO, and we had like this whole period of like Scream on KO, trying to play him as a duelist, and it not really working, and it just was very uninspiring. And then so to see like Cloud9 come with this style that was very much like facilitated by the way that Zeppa was playing that role, I found really cool. And I personally find I love that sort of the team-oriented initiators are usually the kinds of players that I gravitate towards.
You have to appreciate that at the moment, because so many of the gunfights in Valorant are way favored towards somebody because of the utility that's being used. The way that you phrase that in terms of it's just someone clicking on somebody else, like it's incredibly reductive, but
it's reductive for what goes into it, but actually what you see on the screen is like, all right, well,
I understand.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I get it. But people taking raw gunfights, even on like, an entry or just some mid-round fight, doesn't actually happen as often as you would expect for a game that has such a short time to kill and frequent gun duels. The players have gotten good enough with utility now that so many of the duels are going to be heavily favored in one way or another, either due to timing, positioning, or some utility combo that puts someone in a really tricky scenario and they're not going to win the duel like 80% of the time. So that's definitely something that I think that's one of the reasons the fans gravitate towards loving Jet so much, is there are so many raw aim duels because you can force them. And same with like a Reyna or something like that. Yeah, you can be set up for them, but you can also force your own aim duels if you like and be able to still like get out if things get tricky for you. Chamber's going to be similar to that too. People enjoy those kind of agents because you get those raw gunfights where you just get to see, can someone else outskill someone? Whereas a lot of the other engagements are like teamwork based, putting the other player in a bad position to take a fight, and you're like 60-70% favored to win it.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Travis Goff, Adam Ochs, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Thooorin, William Peyton Lacy, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to take part in a lengthy donator discussion with me? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box.